Think about the last time you felt completely overwhelmed by something outside your control. Maybe a sudden deadline at work, a family emergency, or even just the relentless flood of bad news that seems to define our modern world. That feeling of pressure, that sense that everything is spinning just a little too fast, is something every single one of us can relate to. It's in these moments that we crave calm, not as a passive avoidance of reality, but as a powerful, strategic way to navigate the chaos without losing ourselves. And what if I told you that some of the most profound lessons on how to cultivate that kind of calm didn't come from self-help books or modern psychology, but from ancient disasters that shook the very foundations of the world? The Stoics thinkers like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus didn't just philosophize in quiet libraries. They lived through plagues, fires, political betrayals, and wars, and from those upheavals, they forged a philosophy of resilience that is shockingly relevant today. Marcus Aurelius himself wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." But this isn't just another quote about inner peace. It's a battle-tested strategy for maintaining clarity when everything around you is falling apart. In this video, we're going to explore how ancient disasters became the ultimate training ground for Stoic thinkers, teaching them, and now us, how to practice what I call strategic calm. This isn't about suppressing emotions or pretending everything is fine. It's about developing a mindset that allows you to respond to pressure with purpose rather than panic, to see chaos not as a threat, but as an opportunity to exercise virtues like courage, wisdom, and self-control. We'll dive into historical moments like the Great Fire of Rome, which Seneca witnessed firsthand, and the volcanic eruption that buried Pompeii, events that forced Stoics to refine their principles under the most extreme conditions. Their writings, whether Marcus meditating on the front lines of war or Epictetus reflecting on his life as a former slave, are filled with insights on how to stay grounded when the world feels anything but stable. By the end of this journey, you'll have a practical toolkit of Stoic strategies that you can apply to your own life, whether you're dealing with personal setbacks, global uncertainties, or everyday stressors. This is about more than history. It's about learning how to build an unshakable inner citadel, just as the Stoics did, so that no matter what happens outside, you remain centered, clear-headed, and ready to act with intention. So if you've ever wondered how to stay calm under pressure, not by chance, but by choice, you're in the right place. Let's begin. The first lesson from disasters is knowing exactly where to direct your energy, and this is the very heart of the Stoic framework known as the Dichotomy of control. It's the foundational idea that some things are within our power and some things are not, and that our peace of mind depends entirely on understanding the difference. Our own opinions, our impulses, our desires, and our aversions, these are within our control. Everything else, from our reputation and our wealth to the actions of other people and the events of the natural world, is not. The ancient Stoic teacher Epictetus, who began his life as a slave, framed this not as a philosophical suggestion but as a rule for living. He taught that the path to freedom and tranquility is to concern yourself only with what is yours to manage and to meet everything else with acceptance. This isn't a call to passivity, it's a strategic focusing of effort. When you stop wasting mental and emotional energy fighting against the inevitable, you free up an immense amount of power to navigate the situation effectively within the sphere you can actually influence. Consider the catastrophic eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD, which buried the cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum. For those living there, the volcanic explosion itself was utterly beyond their control. They could not stop the ash, the falling rock, or the pyroclastic flows. Their fate was sealed by forces of nature far greater than any human effort. But within that horrifying reality, the Stoic would argue, there remained a domain of control. How did an individual choose to respond in those final moments? With panic and despair, or with courage and a final act of compassion for a loved one? The event itself was indifferent. The human response to it is where virtue and character are revealed. This is the crucial distinction. Disasters, both ancient and modern, violently strip away the illusion of control we cling to in our daily lives. They expose how much we try to manage externals, the weather, the traffic, other people's opinions, the stock market, and how that futile effort is the primary source of our anxiety and exhaustion. This principle transforms chaos from something overwhelming into something manageable. By immediately categorizing any event into what is within your control and what is not, you create instant mental clarity. Your job is not to stop the storm, but to adjust the sails. Your task is not to prevent every negative event, but to govern your judgment of it and your reaction to it. This is the source of true strategic calm. It's a calm born from the confidence that no matter what happens externally, your inner citadel, your capacity for reasoned choice remains yours to command. So let's bring this into your own life. What situations consistently drain your energy because you're desperately trying to control the uncontrollable? Are you agonizing over a family member's choices, stressing about a project outcome entirely dependent on a client's whims, or lying awake at night worrying about a future event that may never happen? The Stoic invitation is to consciously release your grip on those externals and redirect that precious energy inward to your judgments and your actions, which are the only things ever truly yours. Now picture Rome in the year 64 AD. For 6 devastating days and 7 long nights, a fire rages through the ancient city's narrow streets. It consumes everything in its path: homes, temples, markets, leaving chaos and ash in its wake. Rumors swirl that the Emperor Nero himself might have started it, adding a layer of political terror to the natural disaster. In the midst of this unimaginable crisis, we find the philosopher Seneca. As a senator and a trusted advisor, though his influence was waning, he was hardly a detached observer. His own wealth and property were likely at risk. Yet, historical accounts and his own extensive writings reveal a man responding not with panic, but with a profound, purposeful calm. This was Stoic equanimity in action, a masterclass in managing fear and taking rational action when the world is literally on fire. Seneca's calm wasn't a cold, emotionless detachment. It was a strategic positioning of his mind to be most effective. He understood the Stoic principle that while he couldn't single-handedly stop the fire, he absolutely could control his judgment of the event and his response to it. In his letters, he often wrote about the paralyzing nature of panic. He observed that we suffer more in imagination than in reality, that our fears of what might happen are often far worse than the event itself. In a crisis, he argued, the first and most important action is to steady your own mind. A panicked person cannot help themselves or anyone else. A calm person can assess, adapt, and act. He wrote extensively about confronting disturbing news head-on, advising his readers to strip away the terrifying stories we tell ourselves and see the event for what it truly is, a thing to be dealt with, not a monster to be feared. This approach is incredibly relevant to our modern lives. We may not face a city-consuming fire, but we all face our own personal conflagrations, a sudden job loss, a devastating medical diagnosis, a family crisis that erupts without warning. In these moments, our initial reaction is often sheer panic, a spiral of what-ifs and worst-case scenarios. Seneca would tell us that this is the precise moment to practice what he called Premeditatio, the premeditation of evils. By having already considered that adversity could strike, we are not taken by surprise. We can then move to the second step, deliberate action within our sphere of control. During the Great Fire, this might have meant helping neighbors evacuate, salvaging what could be saved, or planning for the reconstruction. In a modern crisis, it might mean focusing on the next right step, making one phone call, gathering important documents, or simply taking a deep breath to regain composure. The power of Seneca's example lies in this shift from being a victim of events to being an agent within them. His calm was a resource, a tool that allowed him to navigate the chaos effectively. He teaches us that equanimity is not about not caring. It's about caring so deeply that you refuse to let your emotions disable your ability to help. So consider this: the next time you are confronted with a sudden upheaval, large or small, how can you practice Seneca's calm deliberation? When the phone rings with bad news or your plans suddenly collapse, can you pause before reacting? Can you take a moment to identify the single next action that is within your power to take and focus your energy entirely on that? This is how we build strategic calm, not by avoiding disasters, but by changing our relationship to them, one reasoned response at a time. What if you could not just accept, but genuinely embrace the challenges you face? What if, instead of resisting the very things that cause you stress and pain, you could welcome them as necessary and even beneficial parts of your life's journey? This is the radical Stoic concept of Amor Fati, a Latin phrase that translates to a love of one's fate. It's the practice of seeing every event, especially the difficult and unwanted ones, as an opportunity to practice virtue, to build strength, and to deepen your character. For the Stoics, a disaster wasn't merely something to be endured. It was a gift in disguise, a chance to prove to yourself what you're truly made of. Marcus Aurelius, ruling an empire constantly battered by war and plague, wrote in his Meditations, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." He saw himself as that fire, and every obstacle, every loss, every betrayal was simply fuel for his own inner light. This perspective transforms suffering from a random punishment into a purposeful training ground. We can find powerful examples of this mindset throughout history. Consider the Antonine Plague that swept through the Roman Empire during Marcus Aurelius' reign. This wasn't a minor outbreak, it was a catastrophic event that killed millions, decimated the Roman army, and created widespread social and economic chaos. From a conventional viewpoint, this was an unmitigated disaster, but Marcus did not see it only as a tragedy. In his writings, he consistently returns to the idea that such events are tests of our character. The plague provided him with endless opportunities to practice duty, courage, and compassion. While others might have succumbed to despair or fled their responsibilities, he saw it as his fate to stay, to lead, and to do his best amid the suffering. He had to love that fate, not because the death and misery were good, but because they were his to deal with, and in dealing with them virtuously, he could grow. This philosophy wasn't limited to emperors. Think of a Stoic merchant in the ancient world whose ship, laden with goods, is wrecked in a storm. He loses his entire investment, his livelihood seemingly destroyed in an instant. A common reaction would be rage at the gods, despair for the future, or bitterness over his bad luck. The Stoic response, guided by Amor Fati, would be different. He would first accept the reality: the ship is gone, this is his fate, but then he would go further, he would embrace it, he would say, "This is what happened. This is my material to work with now. This disaster frees me from the attachment to wealth. It forces me to be resourceful, to rely on my wits, to discover strengths I didn't know I had." It is an opportunity to practice resilience. The event itself is neutral. The meaning we assign to it is everything. The German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, who was deeply influenced by Stoic thought, later captured this idea perfectly when he wrote, "My formula for greatness in a human being is Amor Fati, that one wants nothing to be different, not forward, not backward, not in all eternity. Not merely bear what is necessary, still less conceal it but love it. This shift from resistance to embrace is where we find immense power and freedom. When you stop fighting your reality and start loving it, you cease to be a victim of circumstance and become an active participant in your own growth. The obstacle is no longer a roadblock, it becomes the path itself. So let's bring this profound idea into your own life right now. What current difficulty are you facing that you typically resent or resist? Is it a demanding job, a stressful family situation, a personal health challenge, or a financial pressure? Instead of seeing it as a curse, what if you could view it as your personal training ground for a specific virtue? That difficult job is not just stress. It's your arena for practicing patience and discipline. That family tension is not just drama, it's your chance to practice understanding and setting boundaries with love. That health challenge is not just pain, it's your teacher of resilience and presence. Amor Fati asks you to look at that very situation and find the hidden invitation to become stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. It's not about pretending things are easy, but about recognizing that the toughest moments often carve out the deepest capacity for meaning and strength within us. And while embracing fate is a powerful long-term mindset, the Stoics also had a remarkably practical tool for managing the immediate anxiety that disasters provoke. They didn't wait for catastrophe to strike, they actively and deliberately rehearsed it. This mental exercise is known as Premeditatio Malorum, which translates to the Premeditation of Evils. It's a form of negative visualization, a conscious practice of anticipating potential setbacks, losses, and hardships. Far from being a pessimistic or morbid indulgence, the Stoics saw this as the ultimate form of psychological preparedness. By regularly visiting the worst-case scenarios in their minds, they were not caught off guard when life inevitably delivered its challenges. Seneca, who wrote extensively on this practice, advised that we should rehearse in our minds exile, torture, war, shipwreck. He wasn't encouraging fear, he was building a defense against it. The goal is to walk through the potential disaster calmly and rationally ahead of time, so that if it ever happens, the emotional shock is diminished and your capacity for reasoned response is already primed. Think of it like a fire drill. Schools and offices don't conduct drills because they expect a fire to break out every day. They do it so that if the alarm ever does sound, the response is automatic, practiced, and calm. The initial panic is replaced by muscle memory. Premeditatio Malorum is a fire drill for the mind. You are mentally mapping the exits and rehearsing your steps. When Seneca advised his friend Lucilius to periodically live as if he were poor, to sleep on a hard bed and eat simple food, he was essentially having him run a poverty drill. By voluntarily experiencing a small degree of discomfort, the terrifying prospect of actual poverty loses its power. You prove to yourself that you can handle it, that your happiness is not so fragile that it depends on a soft mattress or an expensive meal. This practice systematically inoculates you against the fear of loss because you have already faced it in your imagination and emerged unscathed on the other side. This principle is just as applicable to our modern financial and emotional security. Consider someone who is deeply anxious about losing their job. That fear can be paralyzing, causing them to operate from a place of scarcity and stress every single day. The Stoic approach would be to sit down and actually premeditate that Malorum, that potential evil. What would happen if I lost my job tomorrow? Well, I would update my resume. I would contact my network. I would cut non-essential spending. I might have to take a different kind of job for a while. It would be difficult and uncomfortable, but it would not be the end of the world. I have skills, I have friends, I would get through it. By walking through this mental sequence, the amorphous cloud of fear solidifies into a series of manageable, practical steps. The anxiety doesn't disappear, but it is contained and contextualized by reason. The event itself, should it occur, is now a familiar landscape you have already navigated in your mind, rather than a terrifying unknown. The profound benefit of this practice is that it doesn't just prepare you for major disasters, it fundamentally alters your relationship with the present moment. By consciously imagining the loss of the things you have, your health, your loved ones, your home, you instantly generate a powerful sense of gratitude for their current presence in your life. You stop taking them for granted. This is the beautiful, paradoxical outcome of Premeditatio Malorum. By regularly contemplating the loss of what we cherish, we learn to appreciate it more deeply while we still have it. It's a practice that simultaneously builds resilience for the future and cultivates gratitude in the present. So let's make this incredibly practical. What's one potential setback that quietly worries you in the back of your mind? Is it a health scare, a project failing, a difficult conversation going poorly? Take just a few minutes today to mentally prepare for it. Walk yourself through the scenario calmly. What is the first thing you would do? What resources do you have? Who could you turn to for support? By rehearsing it, you are not inviting it to happen. You are disarming its power to cause you panic. And in doing so, you are actively building your own strategic calm. Imagine a fortress, not one made of stone and mortar, but an inner stronghold built within the deepest part of your mind, a place of absolute calm and clarity that remains untouched no matter how violently the storms of life rage outside its walls. This is the powerful concept of the inner citadel, a central idea from the writings of the Stoic emperor Marcus Aurelius. While he commanded legions on the frontier, battling Germanic tribes, and managed an empire reeling from a devastating plague, he was simultaneously engaged in a far more personal campaign, the daily construction and defense of this inner sanctuary. His private journal, which we know as Meditations, is essentially the architectural blueprint for this mental fortress. It was not a place to escape reality, but a command center from which to engage with it more effectively, a refuge for his judgment where he could retreat to find peace and perspective before returning to the chaos of his duties. Marcus wrote, "People look for retreats for themselves in the country, by the coast, or in the hills, but this is altogether unphilosophical, when you can at any moment retreat into yourself. Nowhere can a person find a retreat more full of peace or more free from trouble than his own soul. This is the ultimate Stoic skill, the ability to access a state of profound calm no matter your external circumstances." For Marcus, this inner citadel was built brick by brick through the disciplined practice of his philosophy. Every time he questioned a rash impulse, every time he examined a disturbing impression, and chose not to label it as good or bad, every time he focused on his own virtue rather than the actions of others, he was reinforcing the walls. His citadel was his unwavering commitment to his core principles, a place where the opinions of others, the fear of loss, and the allure of power could not penetrate. We can see a direct parallel between this ancient practice and many modern stress management techniques, particularly mindfulness. While mindfulness often emphasizes observing thoughts without judgment, the Stoic inner citadel takes it a step further. It's about actively garrisoning your mind with reasoned principles. It's not enough to simply notice an anxious thought. You must challenge it with logic. Is this event within my control? Is my judgment about it helping or harming me? What virtue can I practice in this situation? This transforms passive awareness into active defense. Building your citadel is a proactive, daily discipline. It's the mental equivalent of a daily workout, strengthening your cognitive and emotional resilience so that when a true crisis hits, your defenses don't crumble. So let's make this deeply personal. Where is your inner citadel? It's not a physical location, but a state of mind you can learn to access. Perhaps it's the few moments of quiet you find during a morning walk, where you consciously set your intentions for the day. Maybe it's the deep breath you take before responding to a provoking email, creating a small space between stimulus and response. It could be the mental list you make of things you're grateful for when you feel envy or dissatisfaction creeping in. Your citadel is wherever you consciously choose your response instead of being controlled by your reactions. And how can you strengthen it daily? You fortify it through consistent, small practices. You might start with 5 minutes of reflection each morning, reviewing what potential challenges the day could bring and how you will meet them with character. You could end your day with a brief review, considering where you were strong and where your walls need reinforcement. You strengthen it by consciously consuming information that builds you up rather than agitates you, by engaging in conversations that are constructive, and by continually returning your focus to your own actions and judgments, the only things ever truly within your command. This inner stronghold is your birthright, and its construction is the most important project you will ever undertake. Now, let's clear up a common confusion. When we hear the word mindfulness today, we often think of a practice aimed at emptying the mind or passively observing our thoughts as they drift by. But Stoic presence is something different, something far more active and engaged. It's not just about noticing the present moment, it's about applying your judgment to it and deciding on the right action to take within it. The Stoics called this prosoch, a practice of vigilant attention to your impressions and judgments in the here and now. While modern mindfulness can help you become aware of your anxiety, Stoic mindfulness gives you the tools to dismantle it by questioning its validity and choosing a virtuous response. It's the difference between noticing you're on a sinking ship and actively starting to bail water or help others into lifeboats. One is awareness, the other is awareness coupled with purposeful action. Disasters have a brutal way of forcing this kind of hyper-focused presence upon us. There's no room for daydreaming or worrying about tomorrow when you're facing an immediate physical threat. The Stoic teacher Epictetus, who knew profound hardship from his time as a slave, understood this intimately. He taught that our chief task is to deal effectively with the impressions that present themselves to us right now. He said, don't let the force of an impression when it first hits you knock you off your feet. Just say to it, hold on a moment, let me see who you are and what you represent. Let me put you to the test. This is the essence of Stoic mindfulness, creating a crucial pause between receiving a sensory impression and assigning a valued judgment to it. A disaster strips away the luxury of delay. It demands that we make this pause incredibly short and our subsequent action incredibly decisive. Imagine you're on an ancient sailing vessel and without warning, a violent storm erupts. The wind howls, the waves crash over the deck, and the ship groans under the strain. This is chaos in its purest form. A person untrained in Stoic principles might be paralyzed by fear, their mind racing with thoughts of drowning, of lost cargo, of their family back home. Their body is on the ship, but their mind is in a terrifying future that hasn't happened yet. The Stoic sailor, guided by prosoch, would have a radically different experience. The howling wind is just wind, the crashing wave is just water. These are external impressions and they are indifferent. What is not indifferent is his response. His entire world narrows to the present moment and the single task at hand. He focuses on tying down that loose rope, on securing that sail, on bailing water from the hull. He is not thinking about the final outcome. He is fully immersed in the doing. His calm is not the absence of fear, but the channeling of all his energy into the actions within his control. His mindfulness is his action. This principle translates perfectly to the metaphorical storms of our modern lives. A project at work is falling apart. A conflict with a loved one erupts. You receive a frightening piece of news. These are all moments that demand Stoic presence. In that instant, the countless worries about next week or next year become irrelevant. The only thing that exists is the current moment and the very next step you can take. The Roman playwright and Stoic thinker Seneca offered powerful advice for this, writing, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future, not to amuse ourselves with either hopes or fears, but to rest satisfied with what we have, which is sufficient, for he that is so wants nothing." The key phrase is to rest satisfied with what we have, which in a crisis translates to using the tools and opportunities immediately available to you right now. Your judgment is your tool, your next action is your opportunity. So let's bring this back to the constant hum of anxiety that so often defines our daily experience. How often do you let the worries of a future that may never come to pass rob you of the clarity and effectiveness available to you in this present moment? You might be physically at your desk, but your mind is agonizing over a meeting that's still days away, draining your energy and clouding your focus on the work you could be doing right now. Stoic mindfulness is the practice of continually reining your attention back from these mental excursions into the future. It's about asking yourself in this very second, what is being asked of me? What impression is knocking at the door of my mind? And what is the rational, virtuous way to answer it? By training yourself to reside in the present and engage with it fully, you don't just reduce anxiety, you unlock a profound capacity for effective action, turning chaos from a threat into a series of manageable tasks. Here is perhaps the single most liberating idea the Stoics left us. The disruptive power of any event lies not in the event itself, but in the judgment we place upon it. An earthquake shakes the ground, a fire consumes a building, a critical word is spoken. These are simply facts, neutral occurrences in the world. They become disasters or insults or tragedies only after they pass through the filter of our minds and we attach a label of bad or unfair or catastrophic to them. The Stoics called these initial, raw sensory data impressions, and they practiced the art of withholding their assent from them. Before an impression could become a solidified judgment that would then trigger a turbulent emotion, they would interrogate it. They would strip it bare, removing the layers of story and emotional charge we so instinctively add, to see the event for what it truly is and nothing more. Epictetus, who began his philosophical journey as a slave, articulated this core principle with stunning clarity. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. He went even further, stating, "Men are disturbed not by things, but by the views which they take of them." To illustrate this, let's consider a historical disaster through a Stoic lens. Imagine a powerful earthquake striking an ancient city. The event itself is a series of tectonic plates shifting. It is a physical phenomenon devoid of intention or malice. It is not evil. The collapsing buildings are structures of stone and wood responding to physics. They are not tragic in and of themselves. The Stoic observing this would see the raw facts: the ground has moved. Structures have fallen. Now, what is within my control? My judgment of this event is within my control. I can choose to see it as a world-ending catastrophe sent by angry gods to punish me, which will lead to despair and paralysis. Or I can see it for what it is, a challenging physical circumstance that now provides me with an opportunity to respond. I can help those who are trapped. I can begin clearing debris. I can offer comfort to the survivors. The earthquake is neutral. My response is where virtue and vice, courage and cowardice are played out. This practice of objective judgment is like learning a new language for interpreting the world. We are so fluent in the language of emotional reactivity that we mistake it for reality itself. We say, "This traffic jam is horrible," when in fact the traffic jam is simply a line of stopped cars. The horrible part is our impatience, our frustration about being late, our story about how this ruins our day. The Stoic asks us to translate that statement into objective truth. My car is not moving, that's all. From that place of clarity, we can then make a choice. Since I cannot control the traffic, I can control my use of this time. I can listen to an audiobook, I can practice deep breathing, I can use the moment to plan my next steps calmly. The external circumstance hasn't changed, but our internal relationship to it has been utterly transformed, moving us from suffering to strategic engagement. This isn't about becoming emotionally numb or pretending that difficult events don't carry weight. It's about reclaiming your power to define your experience. When you stop automatically labeling events as good or bad, you open up a universe of alternative interpretations. A job rejection is not a verdict on your worth. It is neutral information that a particular role was not the right fit at this time, and it frees you to pursue a better opportunity. A rained-out picnic is not a ruined day. It is water falling from the sky, and it creates a chance for a cozy afternoon indoors you wouldn't have otherwise planned. This cognitive shift is the very engine of resilience. It allows you to navigate life's inevitable ups and downs without being constantly thrown off balance, because your equilibrium is no longer tied to the externals you cannot control, but is anchored firmly in your own reasoned perspective. So let's turn this powerful lens onto your own life. Bring to mind a recent event that triggered a strong negative reaction in you, a disagreement, a professional setback, a plan that fell through. Now gently set aside the story you've been telling yourself about it. Strip it down to its bare, objective facts. What actually happened without the adjectives or the drama? Once you have the neutral facts, ask yourself, where did the bad part truly come from? Was it from the event itself or from the judgment I placed upon it? And with that newfound clarity, consider this. Is there another way to view this same set of facts? Could it be reinterpreted not as a setback, but as a redirection? Not as a personal attack, but as a simple expression of someone else's perspective. This act of reinterpretation is not self-deception. It is the ultimate exercise of your most fundamental freedom, the freedom to choose your response. When everything is stripped away, when the structures of society crumble, when the safety nets vanish, when the familiar comforts are gone, what remains? The Stoics argued that in these raw, unfiltered moments, we see the truth of what a person values. And for them, the only thing of true, lasting value, the only genuine good, is your inner character, your virtue. In a world obsessed with externals, wealth, status, reputation, even our own health and the well-being of our loved ones, this is a radical and anchoring idea. These things are not bad. The Stoics called them preferred indifference. They are nice to have, but they are not good in the ultimate sense because they are not entirely within our control, and they can be taken away in an instant by a disaster, a market crash, or a twist of fate. Your virtue, however, your courage, your justice, your wisdom, your self-discipline, this is yours to keep forever. No fire can burn it, no earthquake can shatter it, no thief can steal it. It is the one possession that is truly, inviolably yours. We see this principle play out in stark relief during any major crisis. When a hurricane floods a city or a pandemic empties the streets, human behavior splits into two distinct paths. On one side, you see the desperation that comes from overvaluing externals, the looting of stores, the hoarding of resources, the every person for themselves mentality that erupts when people believe their survival depends solely on acquiring and holding onto material things. This is the panic of someone who has anchored their happiness to possessions that can be washed away. On the other side, you see profound acts of heroism and community, the neighbor sharing their generator, the nurse working endless shifts, the strangers forming rescue lines in rising waters. These are the actions of people who, whether they know it or not, are operating on a Stoic principle. They are demonstrating that what matters most is not what they have, but who they are and how they choose to act toward others. Their character is their anchor, and it allows them to be a source of calm and strength for others even as the storm rages around them. Marcus Aurelius, who had access to every material luxury imaginable as emperor, constantly reminded himself of this truth. He wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Therefore, guard accordingly, and take care that you entertain no notions unsuitable to virtue and reasonable nature." He's telling us that our inner world, the domain of our judgments and character, is the sole source of a happiness that cannot be disrupted by external events. In another passage, he is even more direct. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. This strength is the direct result of having virtue as your sole good. If your happiness is dependent on your portfolio's performance, you will be tossed about by the markets. If your sense of self-worth is tied to your job title, a layoff will feel like a personal annihilation. But if your core value is your integrity, your compassion, your resilience, then no external event can truly damage you. You might lose your comforts, but you will never lose yourself. This isn't a theoretical exercise. It's a practical lens for examining your own life, especially under pressure. The daily frustrations and irritations are small-scale disasters that test our values. Do you lose your temper in a traffic jam, revealing that you value your personal schedule over your inner peace? Do you cut corners on a work project when no one is looking, showing that you value the appearance of success over the virtue of diligence? These micro-moments are rehearsals for larger crises. They reveal the default settings of our character. The goal of Stoic practice is to consciously rewire those settings, to make virtue the default, so that when a true disaster strikes, your automatic response is not panic and greed, but calm and generosity. It's about building a life where your sense of worth is so internally generated that external chaos cannot diminish it. So let's bring this profound question into your own experience. Think about a recent moment of pressure, whether it was a tight deadline, a difficult conversation, or a personal disappointment. When under that pressure, what did your actions say about what you truly value? Did you choose the easy path or the right one? Did you prioritize protecting your ego or understanding another's perspective? Did you grasp tightly for control, or did you demonstrate the flexibility of character? Your honest answer isn't a verdict, it's a data point. It shows you where your anchor is currently set. And the beautiful, empowering promise of Stoicism is that you can always choose to reset it, to drive it deeper into the bedrock of your own virtue, so that no matter how turbulent the times become, you remain unshakably you. Now let's take that practice of objective judgment and elevate it to a cosmic scale. Close your eyes for a moment and picture this. You're an astronaut floating in the silent void of space, looking back at our planet. From that incredible vantage point, the Earth is a magnificent, swirling marble of blue and white, suspended in an infinite blackness. All the borders we fight over, all the cities we've built, all the mountains and oceans, they vanish into a single, breathtaking whole. This is the essence of the Stoic exercise known as the view from above, and it was a powerful tool they used to gain perspective, especially when faced with disasters that felt all-consuming. Marcus Aurelius, who spent so much of his life engaged in the gritty, bloody business of frontier wars, was a master of this. He would constantly remind himself to rise above the immediate fray and look down on the world from a higher vantage point. In his meditations, he wrote, "Keep always before your eyes the rapidity with which all that exists and is coming into being is swept past us and disappears out of sight. For all substance is like a river in ceaseless flow, and ever at our side is the immeasurable span of the past and the yawning gulf of the future, in which all things are vanishing." He wasn't being morbid. He was zooming out to a timescale so vast that the pressing anxieties of the moment inevitably shrank to their proper size. The Stoics used this mental exercise as an antidote to what we might now call catastrophizing, the human tendency to blow our problems up until they blot out everything else. When a plague was ravaging his army camps or a political betrayal threatened his rule, Marcus would practice this cosmic perspective. He would contemplate the sheer size of the universe, the countless stars, the eons of time that had passed and would continue long after he and his empire were dust. From that viewpoint, his personal struggles, while real and demanding his attention, were not the center of the universe. They were a small part of a vast flowing whole. This didn't make his problems irrelevant. It simply placed them in a context that drained them of their excessive emotional power. The anxiety that screamed so loudly in the confines of his tent became a whisper against the backdrop of the cosmos. This technique is the ultimate expression of the Stoic principle that we are disturbed not by events, but by our opinions about them, and one of the most powerful opinions we can hold is that our personal drama is the most important thing in the world. The view from above directly challenges that illusion. We can apply this ancient technique with stunning effectiveness to the pressures of our modern lives. That email that sent your heart racing, that criticism that stung for days, that financial worry that keeps you up at night, imagine viewing them from that astronaut's perspective. See your entire city, then your country, then the continent, until it's all just a beautiful sphere hanging in space. How significant does that one email appear now? How large does that one critical comment loom against the backdrop of billions of people living their lives? This isn't about dismissing your problems. It's about seeing them in their true proportion. It's a cognitive reset button that you can press anytime you feel yourself becoming overwhelmed by the immediacy of a situation. It creates a crucial space between you and the problem, allowing you to re-engage with it from a place of calm clarity rather than reactive panic. In a world that constantly pulls us into a narrow, frantic focus on the immediate, the view from above is a deliberate act of pulling back to see the bigger picture. This practice is incredibly practical because it doesn't require a spaceship. It only requires a few moments of directed thought. The next time you feel a wave of stress about a presentation, a conflict, or a personal failure, just pause. Close your eyes if you can. Visualize the room you're in, then the building, then the neighborhood. Keep pulling back in your mind's eye, seeing the town, the landscape, the country, until you see the whole planet serene and silent. From that vantage point, ask yourself the most clarifying question possible. How might this current problem look from this broader perspective? Is it truly a cataclysm, or is it a manageable event in the long flow of your life? This shift doesn't solve the problem for you, but it does something just as important. It returns to you the mental and emotional resources you need to solve it yourself. It grounds you in the reality that you are part of something vast and wonderful, and that this single moment of difficulty is just one note in a grand symphony. By regularly practicing this shift in perspective, you build a resilience that is not easily shaken because your sense of self is no longer trapped inside the small box of the problem, but is free to roam the entire universe. Think of a mighty oak tree standing firm in a fierce storm. Its branches are not rigid and brittle. They bend and sway with the wind, allowing the force to pass through them without causing catastrophic breakage. Yet through it all, its roots remain deep and unshaken, anchored to the earth. This is a perfect metaphor for Stoic resilience, a strength that is not about stubborn rigidity, but about intelligent flexibility combined with an unbreakable core. The Stoics did not preach a resilience of gritting your teeth and merely enduring suffering. Theirs was an active, dynamic endurance, a conscious practice of adapting to external pressures while holding fast to your inner principles. It's the difference between a stone which can be shattered by a hard enough blow and a flexible reed which bends to the ground in a hurricane only to spring back upright when the wind has passed. The goal is not to avoid the storm, but to learn how to move with it without losing your foundational sense of self. We see this principle embodied most powerfully in the life of Epictetus. Here was a man who knew the deepest forms of hardship from the very beginning. He was born into slavery, his body literally owned by another person. He was then exiled from Rome later in life, forced to leave the city where he had built his school and his reputation. To the outside world, these circumstances would define a life of tragedy and victimhood. But Epictetus himself refused that narrative. He famously taught that while we may not have control over the external events that happen to us, we always have absolute sovereignty over how we choose to interpret and respond to them. His resilience was not passive. It was an active, daily choice to focus his energy on the one thing no master and no emperor could ever take from him: his own faculty of judgment, his ability to choose his attitude. His exile was not a catastrophe to be mourned, but a new set of circumstances to be met with virtue. His resilience was his ability to bend without breaking, to find a way to teach and live with purpose no matter where he was physically located or what limitations were placed upon him. This idea that hardship doesn't just test us but actually reveals our hidden strength is a theme Seneca returns to again and again. He writes, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." He's pointing to a fundamental truth about human psychology. Comfort and ease do not build fortitude. Just as a muscle must be stressed and challenged to grow stronger, our character requires resistance to develop its full capacity for resilience. Seneca observed that we often don't know what we're truly capable of until we are pushed to our limits. A calm sea never made a skilled sailor, and a life free of obstacles would produce a person of shallow character. The Stoic embrace of difficulty is not masochistic, it is profoundly practical. It is the recognition that the very things we instinctively avoid and complain about are, in fact, the raw materials we need to become stronger, wiser, and more compassionate versions of ourselves. The pressure doesn't create weakness, it reveals it, giving us the precise information we need to know where to fortify ourselves. This ancient wisdom translates with stunning clarity to the personal and professional setbacks we all face in the modern world. Consider a major professional rejection, perhaps not getting a promotion you worked tirelessly for, or having a crucial project fail despite your best efforts. The initial blow is real, and the Stoics would never tell you to pretend it doesn't hurt. The resilient response, however, is not to collapse into a story of being a failure or to become bitter. It is to bend like the tree, to allow yourself to feel the disappointment, then to actively analyze the event. What can be learned from this? What skills did this experience reveal that I need to develop? Did my self-worth become too attached to this one specific outcome? This process of learning and adapting is active resilience. It's using the force of the setback to propel your growth in a new direction, rather than letting it break your spirit. Similarly, in our personal lives, a painful breakup or a family conflict can feel like a storm threatening to uproot us. Resilience here means feeling the grief fully, but then asking how this experience can teach you about your own patterns, your needs, and your capacity for forgiveness. It's about finding a way to integrate the pain into your story in a way that makes you more whole, not more fractured. So let's turn this reflection inward. Look back over the landscape of your own life at the challenges you've navigated. What hardship, whether large or small, has ultimately made you stronger? Perhaps it was a period of financial struggle that taught you resourcefulness and the difference between wants and true needs. Maybe it was a health scare that reshuffled your priorities and gave you a profound gratitude for each new day. It could even be a series of smaller, daily frustrations that slowly sanded down your impatience and taught you the value of persistent, gentle effort. How did you grow from it? Did you discover a courage you didn't know you possessed? Did you develop a deeper empathy for others going through similar trials? Did you learn to rely less on external validation and more on your own internal compass? Your answer to this question is the living proof of your own innate resilience, a strength that was always there, waiting for the right conditions to be revealed and honed. Fear is the great amplifier of disaster. It takes a difficult situation and layers it with a terrifying narrative of everything that could possibly go wrong, paralyzing us in the present with nightmares of a future that may never arrive. The Stoics recognized this clearly. The initial event might be beyond our control, but the secondary wave of fear that follows is often far more damaging, and that is something we can learn to manage. Their method was not to suppress or ignore fear, but to bring it into the stark light of reason and interrogate it. They would subject their anxieties to a rigorous cross-examination, asking simple, direct questions. What exactly am I afraid of? What is the worst that could truly happen? Is this outcome within my control? By breaking fear down into its component parts, they systematically drained it of its amorphous, overwhelming power and transformed it from a monster in the dark into a set of manageable facts. We can easily imagine this process playing out during an ancient epidemic like the Antonine Plague. As disease swept through crowded cities, the primary fear wouldn't just be of the illness itself, but of the social collapse that might follow. The breakdown of order, the scarcity of food, the abandonment of the sick. A person gripped by this kind of panic might hoard supplies, hide away from their community, or descend into despair. The Stoic response, however, would begin with that internal interrogation. What am I truly afraid of? I am afraid of dying from this plague. Is that within my control? My ultimate health is not entirely within my control. I can take precautions, but I cannot guarantee I won't get sick. What else am I afraid of? I fear my family will starve if I cannot provide. Is that within my control? I can control how much food we have stored today, and I can control my efforts to find more. I cannot control whether the markets completely collapse. What is the very worst that could happen? The worst is that we all perish. But is that likely? And if it did happen, would my fear change the outcome? This line of questioning doesn't dismiss the gravity of the situation, but it corrals the sprawling, chaotic energy of fear and focuses it on a finite set of concerns, some of which can be acted upon and others which must be accepted. Seneca, who witnessed immense political and personal turmoil, put his finger on the core of this issue with breathtaking precision. He wrote, "We are more often frightened than hurt, and we suffer more from imagination than from reality." This single sentence captures the entire Stoic argument. The pain of a stubbed toe is momentary, but the anxiety about stubbing it again tomorrow can linger for hours. The hardship of a financial loss is real, but the constant, gnawing fear of poverty when one is actually secure is a self-inflicted torture that is far more damaging to our quality of life. The feared event is a single point of pain on the timeline of our lives. The fear of that event is a shadow that can darken countless days and nights that otherwise would have been peaceful. The Stoic goal is to shorten the shadow, to confine the suffering to the event itself, if it even occurs, rather than allowing it to bleed out and poison the vast stretches of time when things are actually okay. This practice is perhaps more relevant today than ever before. We live in an age of informational abundance, which also makes it an age of fear abundance. Our minds are constantly fed a stream of potential threats, economic forecasts, health scares, social conflicts, global tensions. Without the tool of rational interrogation, we can easily become overwhelmed by a low-grade hum of anxiety about things that have a minuscule chance of affecting us directly. The Stoic method is our filter. It teaches us to take each fear, hold it in our hands, and ask for its credentials. Is this a clear and present danger, or a vague and statistical possibility? If it is a possibility, what is the proportionate amount of mental energy it deserves? Is this thing I'm losing sleep over actually within my sphere of influence, or am I torturing myself over a global event I can do nothing about? By dissecting our fears, we move from being passive victims of our own nervous systems to active investigators of reality. We reclaim the mental space that was being occupied by phantom threats and redeploy that energy towards constructive action and genuine peace. So let's make this practical and immediate. What fear have you been carrying around lately, perhaps even unconsciously? Is it a fear of professional failure, of not being enough? Is it a fear of loneliness, of a relationship ending? Or maybe it's a more general anxiety about the state of the world. Pick one just for today, take it out and place it on the table of your mind. Now begin the Stoic cross-examination. Ask it what it's truly about. What is the absolute worst-case scenario it is presenting? How likely is that outcome truly? And most importantly, what parts of this situation fall within your control, and what parts must be released? You may find that the monster, when examined under the light of reason, is far smaller than its shadow suggested, and that you hold more power than you knew to manage the parts that are truly yours to handle. There's a persistent and unfortunate myth that Stoicism is a cold, unfeeling philosophy, that its pursuit of calm equates to emotional detachment or indifference to the suffering of others. Nothing could be further from the truth. The Stoic ideal is not the isolated hermit, untouched by the world's pain, but the composed and effective helper, the person whose inner calm becomes a steadying force for everyone around them. True Stoic compassion is about clarity, not coldness. It's the understanding that a panicked, emotionally overwhelmed person is of little use to anyone, including themselves. But a person who has mastered their own internal reactions, who is not addled by fear or swamped by second-hand distress, is capable of offering genuine, effective aid. Their tranquility is not for themselves alone. It is a resource they can pour into their community. The founder of Stoicism, Zeno of Citium, taught that our natural impulse as human beings is toward sociability and cooperation. He saw humans as fundamentally connected and argued that a life lived according to nature, a core Stoic goal, is a life lived in harmonious and active service to the common good. For the Stoics, wisdom and justice were inseparable. You could not be truly wise if you were not also committed to the welfare of others. This philosophical foundation translated into practical action in the ancient world, especially during times of crisis. While detailed records of organized Stoic relief efforts are sparse, we know that the principles of community duty and rational benevolence were central to their teachings. In an era without modern emergency services, mutual aid was essential for survival. A Stoic philosopher embodying these ideals would be the one organizing neighbors to assist after an earthquake, using reason to coordinate the most effective distribution of scarce resources like food and water, or calmly tending to the injured while others might be frozen by shock. Their focus would be on what could be done right now to alleviate suffering rather than on lamenting the injustice of the disaster. This is compassion with a clear head and a steady hand. It's the difference between someone who runs into a burning building screaming and someone who runs in with a plan, focused on locating those in need and getting them to safety. Both actions are brave, but one is far more likely to yield a positive outcome. The Stoics aimed for the latter. Marcus Aurelius, despite the immense weight of leading an empire through war and plague, constantly reminded himself of this duty to others. In his private meditations, he wrote, "Men exist for the sake of one another. Teach them then or bear with them." This simple line encapsulates the Stoic approach to compassion. Our fundamental connection to other people is a fact of nature, and from that connection flows a responsibility. When we can, we teach, we offer reason, guidance, and help others see a clearer path. And when we cannot teach, we bear with them. We practice patience, understanding, and tolerance. He also wrote, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee." The individual's well-being is inextricably linked to the health of the community. His own calm amidst the chaos of his reign was not a personal luxury, it was a public utility. The stability of his judgment was the foundation upon which the entire empire relied during some of its most difficult years. His compassion was the calm, decisive leadership that kept the machinery of state and relief functioning for the benefit of millions. This ancient virtue finds its direct parallel in our modern world. Think of the most effective paramedics, crisis counselors, or disaster relief workers. They are not devoid of emotion, they are deeply empathetic, but they undergo rigorous training to manage their own physiological and emotional responses so that their empathy doesn't morph into paralyzing distress. Their calm is a professional tool that allows them to think clearly, follow protocols, and provide the best possible care under tremendous pressure. In our own smaller spheres, we see this too. The friend who remains a calm, non-judgmental listener when you are falling apart is practicing a form of Stoic compassion. They are feeling with you, but they are not falling apart with you. Their steady presence provides a container for your chaos, allowing you to express it without fear of overwhelming them. In a family crisis, the person who can set aside their own panic to make clear-headed phone calls, arrange logistics, and speak calmly to authorities is offering a gift of immense value. They are not caring less, they are caring effectively. So this invites a powerful and practical question for how you move through your own world. How can your hard-won calm, the serenity you are building through your own practice, become a tangible resource for others in your life? It starts with recognizing that your emotional state is contagious. When you enter a stressful situation, a tense workplace meeting, a family argument, a community emergency, you have a choice. You can add to the collective anxiety with your own reactive energy, or you can act as a grounding wire. Your calmness is not a wall to hide behind, it's a foundation others can stand on. It might look like taking a deep breath before responding to a provocation, consciously lowering your voice in a heated discussion, or simply being the person in the room who listens more than they speak. It means offering help not from a place of frantic urgency, but from a place of focused presence. Your stability gives others permission to find their own. In this way, the practice of Stoicism becomes far more than a personal self-improvement project. It becomes a quiet, powerful form of service, transforming your inner citadel into a sanctuary for others when they need it most. Walk through the crumbling arches of an ancient Roman forum or stand before the weathered stones of a Greek temple, and you are standing in the presence of a powerful Stoic teacher, impermanence. These ruins are not just relics of the past, they are active, silent sermons on the inevitable nature of change and decay. For the Stoics, this wasn't a depressing truth to be avoided, but a fundamental law of the universe to be understood and embraced. They believed that a significant portion of our anxiety and suffering stems from a single, flawed instinct, our desperate attempt to hold onto things that are, by their very nature, fleeting. We clutch at our youth, our possessions, our relationships, and even our own lives as if they were permanent possessions, and in that clutching, we create the very tension that disrupts our peace. The Stoic practice of accepting impermanence is the conscious loosening of that grip, a deliberate alignment with the natural flow of all things, which in turn generates a profound and unshakable calm. The philosopher Heraclitus, whose work deeply influenced Stoic thought, famously said that no man ever steps in the same river twice, for it is not the same river and he is not the same man. This isn't just poetic imagery, it's a precise description of reality. Everything is in a constant state of flux. The Stoics took this idea and made it a cornerstone of their mental training. Marcus Aurelius, riding through his empire and seeing both its grandeur and its fragility, constantly meditated on this. He wrote, "Keep in mind how fast things pass by and are gone, those that are now and those to come. Existence flows past us like a river. The now that you are experiencing is as fleeting as the now in which this sentence is being written and read." He wasn't trying to depress himself, he was inoculating himself against the shock of loss. By keeping the transience of all things at the forefront of his mind, he could appreciate them more deeply while they lasted and release them more gracefully when they were gone. The fall of a city, the death of a loved one, the loss of status, these were not unnatural aberrations in a stable world, but expressions of the world's core nature. We can see this philosophy applied to the grand scale of history. Imagine a wealthy Roman merchant living in the bustling port city of Ostia in the 2nd century. His business is thriving, his villa is beautiful, his family is secure. He feels a sense of permanence, of solidity, but the Stoic living in that same city would hold a different view. He would look at the crowded docks and the grand buildings and see not permanence, but a temporary arrangement of stones and wood that would one day, like all things, return to dust. This wasn't nihilism, it was clarity. This perspective wouldn't stop him from enjoying his life or building his business. In fact, it would allow him to do so more fully, because he would be free from the underlying anxiety of potentially losing it all. He would be engaged in the world but not enslaved by it. When the inevitable changes did come, a shift in trade routes, a fire, a political upheaval, he would be psychologically prepared. His peace was not built on the stability of his externals, which he knew was an illusion, but on his acceptance of their inevitable transformation. This wisdom is desperately needed in our modern world, which is in many ways designed to make us forget the truth of impermanence. We live in a culture that worships the new, idolizes youth, and encourages endless accumulation. We are sold the fantasy that we can freeze time, that we can hold onto our health, our relationships, and our achievements forever. And when life, as it always does, reminds us that we cannot, when we face a job loss, a divorce, a decline in our physical abilities, or simply the relentless march of time that turns today's cutting-edge technology into tomorrow's antique, we feel it as a personal failure, a violation of the natural order. The Stoic invitation is to flip this script entirely. to see that the beauty of a rose is inseparable from its fleeting bloom, that the value of a moment is heightened precisely because it will not last. Acknowledging that your job is temporary can make you more present and dedicated while you have it. Understanding that a relationship will one day end, whether through separation or death, can make you more grateful and loving within it. This acceptance doesn't diminish life, it sanctifies it. So let's turn this profound reflection inward to the quiet attachments we all carry. Look at your own life with gentle honesty. What are you clinging to with a white-knuckled grip, deep down knowing that it is temporary? Are you clinging to a particular version of your career, believing your sense of worth is tied to a specific title or salary? Are you clinging to your children's youth, dreading the natural and healthy process of them growing into independent adults? Are you clinging to a physical ideal, fighting a rearguard action against the natural aging of your own body? Or perhaps you're clinging to a grudge, a story of past wrongs, as if holding onto it will somehow stop time and undo what has already happened. The act of identifying this clinging is the first step toward freedom. It is not a command to let go immediately, but simply to see the tension in your own hands, to acknowledge that the thing you fear losing was never truly yours to keep in the first place, but was always a gift on loan from nature, to be enjoyed fully and returned gracefully when the time comes. This realization is the beginning of a deep and lasting serenity, a calm that flows from being in harmony with, rather than at war against, the fundamental current of life itself. Now consider the sheer volume of words we are bombarded with every day, not just from others but from our own minds and devices. In any moment of modern crisis, whether it's a personal conflict or a breaking news alert, our first impulse is often to fill the air with noise, to vent, to speculate, to seek immediate answers, or to scroll endlessly through a digital chorus of hot takes and reactions. This chatter, both internal and external, acts like fuel on the fire of panic. It amplifies uncertainty, distorts reality, and pulls us into a reactive spiral where we are constantly responding to the latest stimulus instead of pausing to find a centered response. The Stoics identified this danger centuries ago and prescribed a powerful antidote, the disciplined practice of silence. This isn't merely the absence of sound. It's an active, intentional cultivation of inner and outer quiet that creates the mental space for clarity to emerge. In the midst of chaos, the most strategic thing you can do might be to simply stop talking and start listening to the situation, to your own reasoned judgment, and to what is actually needed. The Stoic value of restraint in speech is deeply practical, not just philosophical. Epictetus, who spent his life teaching students how to navigate a world full of turmoil and uncertainty, placed enormous emphasis on mastering the tongue. He offered a simple but profound test for whether something should be said. Is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? He advised. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. For Epictetus, careless speech was a primary source of trouble, creating conflicts, spreading misinformation, and agitating our own souls. He believed that before we can control any external event, we must first learn to control our own expressions, and that begins with our words. In a disaster scenario, like a military siege or a city in panic, the person who speaks less and observes more holds a significant advantage. They are not adding to the confusion, they are gathering data, assessing the true nature of the threat, and conserving their energy for actions that matter. Their silence is a form of power, a gathering of focus that allows them to act with precision when others are still flailing in a cloud of their own fearful narratives. We can find powerful historical examples of this principle in action among great military and political leaders known for their composure under fire. The Roman general and Stoic practitioner Gaius Marius was famous for his ability to remain silent and observant during war councils while others argued and postured. His restraint allowed him to absorb all perspectives, identify the core of the problem, and then deliver a decisive, well-considered plan. He understood that in a crisis, words are a currency to be spent wisely, not wasted. Similarly, the philosopher Socrates, though not a Stoic, embodied a related virtue through his relentless questioning. He often responded to complex, emotional challenges not with declarations, but with more questions, creating a space of thoughtful silence that exposed faulty reasoning and led to wiser conclusions. This practice of strategic silence creates a container for clear thinking. It's the difference between a room full of people shouting over each other in a panic and a room where one calm voice, which has waited for the right moment, can cut through the noise and offer a direction that everyone can hear and trust. This ancient discipline is shockingly relevant in our current age of relentless social media noise and the 24-hour news cycle. Our digital environment is essentially a perpetual crisis zone, designed to trigger our fear and outrage responses to keep us engaged. Every notification, every trending topic, every comment thread is an opportunity for thoughtless chatter to invade our minds and escalate our anxiety. We feel pressured to have an immediate opinion on everything, to contribute to every conversation, to react instantly to every provocation. This constant verbal and mental output is exhausting and deeply disorienting. It pulls us out of our own center and into a collective panic attack. The Stoic practice of silence offers a way to reclaim your mental sovereignty. It means consciously choosing to disengage from the digital noise, to refrain from adding your voice to every online argument, and to create periods of quiet where you can detox from the opinions of others and reconnect with your own reasoned judgment. It's about recognizing that not every thought needs to be shared, and not every stimulus deserves a response. So let's bring this principle into the tangible reality of your daily life. Where could the intentional introduction of more silence act as a source of greater calm? Perhaps it's in resisting the urge to immediately respond to that frustrating email, instead letting it sit for an hour while you cool down and gather your thoughts, ensuring your eventual reply is measured and effective rather than reactive. Maybe it's in choosing to drive to work without the podcast or music, giving your mind a few precious minutes of uninterrupted quiet to process and prepare for the day. It could be as simple as committing to the first 5 minutes of your morning in complete silence before you even look at your phone, to firmly anchor your day in your own priorities rather than the world's demands. Or perhaps it's in your conversations where you make a conscious effort to listen more deeply, to ask a question and then truly wait for the answer without formulating your own response, discovering that in the space between words, real understanding and connection can grow. Imagine for a moment an athlete training for the Olympics. They don't simply show up on the day of the event and hope to perform at peak level. Their gold medal performance is the result of thousands of hours of grueling, deliberate practice, pushing their body and mind to the limit in the gym and on the track, so that when the pressure is highest, their response is automatic, honed, and powerful. The Stoics viewed the cultivation of calm in exactly the same way. They believed that inner fortitude is not a genetic gift or a lucky accident, but a skill, a muscle that must be consistently exercised to be strong when you truly need it. They called this concept ascesis, which translates to training or exercise. This was their philosophical gymnasium, a daily regimen of voluntary discomfort designed to inoculate the soul against the involuntary hardships that life would inevitably deliver. The goal was never to seek out pain for its own sake, but to prove to themselves through direct experience that they could handle far more than they feared, and that their well-being was not dependent on perfect external conditions. This training took many practical forms in the ancient world. A common practice was voluntary poverty, where a wealthy Stoic would periodically live as if they had very little. Seneca, one of the richest men in Rome, was a fervent advocate of this. He would deliberately set aside a certain number of days each month to wear his simplest clothing, eat only the most basic bread and water, and sleep on a hard bed. He wasn't pretending to be poor, he was conducting a resilience drill. He explained his reasoning in his letters, writing, "Set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, 'Is this the condition that I feared?'" His question cuts to the very heart of the exercise. By willingly experiencing a small degree of lack, he was systematically dismantling the terror that the prospect of poverty held over him. He was proving to his own nervous system that he could not only survive but also maintain his equanimity, even without his luxurious cushions and fine wines. His wealth became a preferred, indifferent something nice to have, but not something essential to his core happiness and identity. Beyond dietary and material simplicity, the Stoics also trained with physical discomforts that we might recognize today as forms of biohacking or resilience training. Taking cold plunges in public baths was a common practice, not for the thrill of it, but for the mental discipline required to overcome the body's initial shock and protest. Fasting was another tool, not for religious purification, but to master hunger pangs and demonstrate that the mind could remain clear and focused even when the stomach was empty. Even something as simple as walking barefoot or choosing to stand when a comfortable seat was available could be part of the daily workout. Each of these small acts was a repetition in the gymnasium of the soul. Each was a tiny victory over the part of the mind that constantly seeks ease and avoidance, strengthening the neural pathways of resilience and building what modern psychologists call distress tolerance. The philosopher Musonius Rufus, a teacher of Epictetus, put it plainly: "How can a person become courageous if they only pursue a life of comfort? They must train themselves to endure hardships." The brilliant connection for us today is how perfectly this ancient Stoic concept aligns with the cutting-edge science of modern resilience training and stress inoculation. Therapists now use graduated exposure therapy, where individuals gradually and safely confront the very things they fear, to treat phobias and anxiety disorders. Elite military units like the Navy SEAL don't just train for physical fitness. They are put through hellish simulations designed to break them down psychologically, all so they can learn to access a state of calm focus amidst absolute chaos. Even the popular trend of taking ice baths or practicing intermittent fasting is, in its essence, a modern rediscovery of the Stoic gymnasium. We are intuitively drawn to these practices because we recognize on a deep level that a life of total comfort makes us soft and vulnerable. By voluntarily stepping into controlled discomfort, we are not punishing ourselves. We are building a psychological immune system. We are sending a powerful message to our deepest psyche: I am capable. I can handle difficulty. My peace is not so fragile that it depends on everything being easy. So the question this ancient practice leaves us with is not an abstract philosophical one, but an intensely personal and practical challenge. Look at your own daily routine, at the small comforts you might take for granted. What is one tiny, manageable challenge you could voluntarily embrace today to begin building your own resilience? It doesn't have to be dramatic. Perhaps it's choosing to take a 5-minute cooler shower in the morning, turning off the podcast during your commute to sit with your own thoughts for a while, or skipping that afternoon snack and sitting with the feeling of hunger for an hour. The specific action is far less important than the conscious intention behind it. It is the act of willingly saying yes to a minor discomfort, not because you have to, but because you are choosing to strengthen your inner citadel. In that small, deliberate choice, you are not just building a tolerance for cold water or an empty stomach. You are building a profound and unshakable confidence in your own ability to meet whatever larger challenges life may have in store for you. This brings us to a profound and perhaps the most challenging Stoic concept of all, the idea that the very disasters we fear are not chaotic interruptions of a peaceful world, but an integral part of a rational, interconnected cosmic order. The Stoics looked at the world through the lens of logos, a divine, intelligent principle that permeates all of nature, governing everything from the changing of the seasons to the eruption of volcanoes. From this perspective, a flood isn't a random act of destruction. It is the river following its nature to overflow its banks after heavy rains. A forest fire, while devastating, is a natural mechanism for clearing old growth and allowing new life to emerge. The Stoic goal was to align their own will with this grand, rational plan of nature, not to resign themselves to suffering with a passive sigh, but to actively harmonize their judgments and actions with the fundamental reality of how the universe operates. Acceptance in this light is the ultimate form of cooperation with reality. Marcus Aurelius returns to this theme again and again in his private writings, using it as an anchor during his most trying times. He writes, "Everything is interwoven and the web is wholly, none of its parts are unconnected. They are composed harmoniously, and together they compose the world." He then follows with a command to himself: accept everything which happens, even if it seems disagreeable, because it leads to this, the health of the universe. This is a breathtakingly expansive viewpoint. He is urging himself to see his personal struggles, even the plague ravaging his troops, as threads within a vast, holy web whose overall pattern he cannot fully perceive. His duty is not to curse the thread for its color or texture, but to play his part within the tapestry with virtue and understanding. Another powerful passage directs, "Let your every action, word, and thought be that of a person who could depart from life at any moment." But to depart from life is nothing to be feared. If gods exist, you will live among them. If they do not, you will be at rest with that which is insentient. So you will be at rest and free from pain and fear. Here he aligns even with the ultimate natural event, death itself, seeing it not as a terrifying end but as a simple, natural return to the elements from which he came. We can see how this philosophy would directly inform the Stoic response to the natural disasters of their era. Imagine a Stoic farmer whose fields and home are swept away by a flooding river. The common, understandable reaction would be rage at the heavens, despair for his lost livelihood, and a sense of brutal injustice. The Stoic, while undoubtedly feeling the gravity of the loss, would work to frame it differently. He would begin by accepting the fundamental reality: water flows downhill. Heavy rain causes rivers to rise. This is the nature of water and the nature of the world. His farm was built in a place that was, by its very nature, susceptible to this event. The disaster was not a personal attack from an angry god, but the unfolding of natural law. This acceptance is the crucial first step that prevents the secondary suffering of rage and despair. From that place of clarity, he can then ask the constructive questions rooted in his own sphere of control. How can I rebuild in a wiser location? How can my community and I better prepare for the next time? His energy is directed not at fighting the nature of water, but at flowing with it, adapting to it, and learning from it. This ancient wisdom offers a radically different framework for processing the immense ecological crises we face today, such as climate change, extreme weather events, and rising sea levels. Our modern response is often a volatile mix of denial, panic, and blame, all states of mind that the Stoics would identify as arising from a refusal to accept the reality of the situation. This doesn't mean we should be passive or abandon efforts to mitigate environmental damage. Quite the opposite. True Stoic acceptance is about seeing the situation with unflinching clarity, free from the distorting filters of wishful thinking or catastrophic fear. It means accepting the scientific reality that the climate is changing and that certain consequences are now inevitable. This clear-eyed acceptance is not defeatism. It is the only solid ground from which effective, rational action can spring. Panic leads to chaotic, short-sighted solutions. Denial leads to inaction. But acceptance allows us to channel our energy into adaptation, resilience building, and intelligent mitigation within the sphere of what we can actually control. So let's turn this cosmic perspective inward to the personal storms we all weather. How often do you find yourself in a state of internal resistance, fighting against a reality that has already arrived? We fight against a diagnosis, against a traffic jam, against the aging of our own bodies, against the fact that it is raining on the day we planned a picnic. This resistance is a form of arguing with reality, and as the saying goes, what happens when you argue with reality? You lose 100% of the time. The stress and anxiety we feel in these moments is not caused by the event itself, but by the friction between our desires and the unchangeable facts. Aligning with reality is the act of releasing that friction. It is looking at the rain and saying, "It is raining. The picnic as I imagined it is no longer possible." What is now possible? This shift doesn't magically make the rain stop, but it instantly stops the internal downpour of frustration and disappointment. It returns your power to you, allowing you to respond to the world as it is, not as you wish it would be. Your calm is found not in controlling the universe, but in harmonizing with its rhythm. Now let's explore one of the most misunderstood Stoic practices, detachment. When we hear that word, we might picture a cold, unfeeling person who doesn't care about anything or anyone, but that's not the Stoic meaning at all. Healthy Stoic detachment is not about numbness or isolation. It's about freedom. It's the conscious decision to not let your inner peace be held hostage by external events, by the things that are outside your control. The Stoics called this state apatheia, which doesn't mean apathy in the modern sense, but rather a state of being undisturbed by the passions and turbulent emotions that swirl around things we can't command. It's the cultivation of a calm inner sea, even when the external storm is raging. The ancient Stoics were masters of this. They trained themselves to see all the trappings of conventional success, wealth, social status, reputation, even their own physical health, as preferred indifference. Yes, it's preferable to have them rather than not, but they are ultimately indifferent to your core happiness and moral worth because they can be taken away in an instant by forces beyond your control. Your virtue, your character, your reasoned choices, these are the only true goods, and they are inviolable. Epictetus, who knew the deepest forms of loss from his time as a slave, put it with stunning clarity. He is a wise man who does not grieve for the things which he has not, but rejoices for those which he has. And even more powerfully, he offered this guiding principle. People are not disturbed by things, but by the views they take of them. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. Your reaction is your sovereignty. We can see this philosophy tested in the crucible of ancient disasters. Picture a wealthy Roman senator who has built his entire identity on his political influence, his vast land holdings, and his prestigious family name. Then a political upheaval occurs. He's accused of treason, his property is confiscated by the state, and he's exiled from Rome, stripped of everything in a matter of days. For most people, this would be a fate worse than death, the complete annihilation of their self-worth. But a Stoic in that same situation would have been mentally prepared. He would have practiced Premeditatio Malorum, the premeditation of evils, and regularly contemplated the possibility of such a loss. When it happened, he would certainly feel the gravity of the event. The Stoics never denied reality, but he would not be destroyed by it. He would differentiate between the external circumstances and his internal judgment of them. He has lost his wealth and status, but has he lost his ability to act with courage? Has he lost his capacity for justice? Has he lost his wisdom? His true self remains intact. His peace was never in the villa or the title. It was in his character, and that is something no emperor can confiscate. This ancient practice offers a searing critique of our modern culture of materialism and external validation. We are constantly encouraged to anchor our happiness to things outside ourselves, to the perfect job, the ideal relationship, the right number of followers, the newest gadget, the luxurious vacation. Our economy and our social media ecosystems are built on creating and then exploiting this sense of lack, this feeling that we are incomplete without the next external acquisition or approval. This creates a fragile and anxious existence because we are building our inner home on a foundation of sand, on things that are inherently unstable and fleeting. Every market crash, every critical comment, every missed opportunity then feels like a personal earthquake because we have invested so much of ourself in things we cannot ultimately control. We become like puppets, our emotions jerked around by the unpredictable movements of the external world. The Stoic alternative is to consciously withdraw that investment, to stop betting your happiness on externals. This doesn't mean you can't enjoy them. You can fully enjoy a beautiful meal, a comfortable home, or professional success. The difference is in the attachment. It's the difference between enjoying a beautiful sunset and needing to own the sun. The Stoic enjoys the sunset, feels deep gratitude for the experience, and then lets it go without clinging to it or demanding that it last forever. This is the essence of healthy detachment, engaged enjoyment without desperate clinging. It allows you to move through the world with a light touch, appreciating the gifts of fortune when they are present, and releasing them without devastation when they are inevitably taken away. Your inner peace becomes your constant companion, not a distant destination dependent on everything going right. So let's bring this profound question into the quiet space of your own reflection. Look honestly at the landscape of your desires and fears. What external thing, possession, or circumstance have you unconsciously overvalued, to the point that its presence or absence has an outsized power to disrupt your peace? Is it your financial portfolio, where a dip in the market can send your mood into a tailspin for days? Is it your social standing, where a perceived slight or a lack of recognition feels like a deep personal wound? Is it your physical appearance, where a new wrinkle or a number on the scale can dictate your entire sense of self-worth for a week? Or perhaps it's even more subtle, the need for a particular plan to work out exactly as you envisioned, and the intense frustration you feel when reality dares to deviate from your script. Identifying this attachment isn't a cause for self-judgment. It's the first and most crucial step toward reclaiming your freedom. It's the moment you realize the chains are of your own making, and therefore the key is already in your hand. Courage in the Stoic sense is not the absence of fear. It is not a magical state of fearlessness reserved for heroes in storybooks. True Stoic bravery is something far more accessible and therefore far more powerful. It is the ability to act rightly, to do what virtue demands even while fear is present. The Stoics understood that fear is a primal, physiological response to perceived threat. It's a natural part of the human operating system. Trying to eliminate it entirely is as futile as trying to stop your heart from beating. The goal is not to silence the alarm bell, but to learn how to take clear, decisive action while it is ringing. A disaster doesn't ask for a person without fear. It reveals the person who can move forward with purpose even as their knees shake and their heart hammers in their chest. This is courage in its most practical and heroic form. We see this philosophy embodied in the final moments of some of history's most renowned Stoics. Consider the death of Cato the Younger, a Roman senator who became a symbol of republican integrity and Stoic principle. When his cause was definitively lost in the civil war against Julius Caesar, Cato chose to take his own life rather than live under what he saw as a tyranny. The act itself was grim, but the accounts of his final hours are a masterclass in Stoic courage. He was not unafraid of death. Rather, he was more afraid of living a life contrary to his virtues of liberty and justice. After a first attempt failed, he did not panic or despair. He calmly sutured his own wounds, read Plato's Phaedo on the immortality of the soul, and then, without drama or haste, completed the act. His courage was not the absence of feeling, but the supremacy of his principles over his physical instincts. Similarly, Seneca, ordered to commit suicide by the Emperor Nero, met his end with a calm that unsettled his executioners. As he bled out, he dictated his final thoughts to his scribes, his mind clear and focused on comforting his friends even as his body failed. His fear was undoubtedly present, but it was managed, compartmentalized, and ultimately overruled by his commitment to facing the end as a philosopher should, with reason and dignity. This nuanced view of bravery was echoed by the Roman orator Cicero, who, while not a strict Stoic, was deeply influenced by their teachings. He defined courage not as a blind rush into danger, but as a considered choice, writing, "The brave man is not he who feels no fear, for that were stupid and irrational, but he whose noble soul subdues its fear and bravely dares the danger which duty bids him face." This is the crucial distinction. The Stoic doesn't feel no fear. They subdue it through the application of reason and a commitment to duty. They interrogate the fear. What is the worst that can happen? Is this danger within my control? What does my role, my duty, require of me in this moment? The answers to these questions provide a roadmap for action that exists separately from the emotional storm. The fear becomes background noise, a physiological response to be acknowledged but not obeyed. This ancient understanding of courage is on display in every modern emergency. Picture a firefighter ascending a smoke-filled staircase. They are not devoid of fear. Their training has taught them to respect the immense danger of fire. Their courage is the act of placing one foot in front of the other, of focusing on the task of searching for survivors, despite every primal instinct screaming at them to flee. Their bravery is in the action, not the feeling. Or consider a nurse working tirelessly during the peak of a pandemic, facing the very real fear of infection and the exhaustion of relentless shifts. Their courage is shown in the gentle care they provide to each patient, in the meticulous following of protocols, and in the quiet support they offer to colleagues, all while carrying the weight of their own anxiety. They are not fearless superheroes. They are human beings performing acts of profound bravery by choosing duty over comfort and service over surrender. This reframing makes courage something we can all access in our own lives, far from ancient battles or burning buildings. It asks us to look for bravery not in the grand, dramatic gesture, but in the small, daily victories over our own hesitations. It was the courage to speak up in a meeting when your idea was unpopular, even though your voice trembled. It was the courage to have that difficult conversation with a loved one, despite the knot of anxiety in your stomach. It was the courage to start a new career path later in life, fully aware of the risk and the fear of failure. In each case, courage wasn't the emotion you felt, but the action you took while feeling it. So bring to mind a recent moment in your own life, a crossroads where fear was present. When did you last choose to move forward, to do the thing you believed was right or necessary, even though a part of you was afraid? That moment, however small it may seem, is your personal testament to Stoic bravery. It is the living proof that you, too, can act alongside your fear, using it not as a stop sign, but as a stark reminder that what you are about to do truly matters. Our desires are like open windows in a storm. The more we have, the more vulnerable we are to the chaos and turmoil of the outside world. Every time we attach our happiness to something external, something outside the inviolable fortress of our own character, we give that thing power over us. We hand it the keys to our inner peace, and in doing so, we make ourselves exquisitely vulnerable to the inevitable shifts of fortune. The Stoics identified this link between desire and suffering as a fundamental law of human psychology, and they developed a powerful antidote they called the discipline of desire. This isn't about crushing all longing or living a life of barren austerity. It's about the intelligent and conscious moderation of our wants, a careful pruning of our attachments to ensure that our well-being is rooted in unshakable ground, safe from the disasters that can so easily sweep away the things we typically cling to for security. At its core, this discipline is a practice of discernment. It asks us to rigorously examine the objects of our desire and ask a simple but profound question: is this within my complete control? We might deeply desire perfect safety for our family, a rock-solid guarantee that no harm will ever come to them. But the Stoic would point out that this is a desire for an impossible external. We can take prudent precautions, we can lock our doors and make healthy choices, but we cannot control the drunk driver on the road, the virus in the air, or the countless other variables that make absolute safety an illusion. To desire it is to set ourselves up for constant, low-grade anxiety and potentially for devastating grief if the worst should happen. The same logic applies to our desire for comfort. We crave a life free from hardship, from inconvenience, from difficult emotions. Yet the nature of life is change and challenge. By desiring a perpetual state of ease, we become exquisitely sensitive to the smallest irritations. A delayed flight, a critical comment, a minor illness, these small deviations from our desired state of comfort feel like major personal failures or injustices, causing us far more suffering than the events themselves warrant. The Stoic teacher Epictetus, who knew the fragility of external comforts better than most, offered the clearest guidance on this practice. He drew a circle around the only things that are truly, unequivocally ours: our opinions, our impulses, our desires, and our aversions. Everything else, our property, our reputation, our health, our very bodies, he placed outside that circle. His famous injunction was to limit our desires strictly to what lies within that inner circle. He said, freedom is secured not by the fulfilling of one's desires, but by the removal of desire. This is a radical statement. He isn't saying we should never prefer health over sickness or comfort over discomfort. He is saying that our ultimate freedom, our eudaimonia or flourishing, is found in making our desire itself the target of our discipline. We train ourselves to desire only one thing above all else: to live with virtue and excellence of character, no matter what externals we have or lack. When that becomes our primary desire, we become virtually invulnerable. No disaster can take from us the one thing we truly want. This ancient wisdom holds up a stark mirror to our modern world, which is practically engineered to inflame our desires for externals. Consumer culture is a massive, sophisticated machine dedicated to convincing us that our happiness and identity are just one purchase away. It teaches us to desire the newest phone, the fastest car, the most stylish home, presenting these objects not as neutral tools but as solutions to the existential problem of our own inadequacy. Our addiction to comfort is equally pervasive. We expect climate-controlled environments, instant gratification, and frictionless digital experiences. We medicate away normal sadness and boredom, seeking to smooth out every possible rough edge of human existence. In doing so, we are like athletes who only ever train in a perfect gym and then are shocked when we're asked to perform on a muddy, uneven field. We have become psychologically flabby, losing our resilience because we are no longer in the habit of tolerating even the slightest discomfort. We have, in a sense, desired ourselves into a state of profound vulnerability. The practice of tempering these desires is therefore not a rejection of modern life, but a way to engage with it from a position of strength. It means walking through a shopping mall or scrolling through an online store and consciously observing the desires that arise without feeling compelled to act on them. It means asking, do I need this, or do I just desire the feeling I believe it will provide? It means voluntarily choosing discomfort at times, taking the stairs instead of the elevator, turning off the heating in the car for a few minutes, fasting between meals, not as a punishment, but as a gentle, consistent workout for your resilience muscle. Each time you do this, you are proving to yourself that your well-being is not dependent on perfect external conditions. You are closing one of those open windows against the storm, strengthening your inner citadel. So consider this not as a call to a life of lack, but as an invitation to a life of true freedom. What single desire, perhaps one you've never even questioned before, could you begin to temper this week to increase your resilience? Is it the desire for constant approval, which makes you vulnerable to every critical glance? The desire for control, which leaves you frustrated by every unexpected change? Or is it the simple, pervasive desire for a little more comfort, a little less friction, that makes the ordinary challenges of life feel so unexpectedly heavy? This brings us to a profound and often overlooked dimension of Stoic practice. It was never meant to be a purely solitary pursuit. While the inner citadel is built one mind at a time, its true power is revealed when those walls of individual calm are connected to form a fortress of collective stability. Stoicism is not a philosophy of retreat, it is a philosophy of engaged, rational connection. It understands that a single calm mind can steady itself, but a community of calm minds can weather any storm. In the midst of a crisis, panic is a social contagion. It spreads through glances, through raised voices, through the unthinking reactions of the crowd. But so is calm. A grounded, reasoned presence in one person can act as a psychological anchor for everyone around them, creating a ripple effect of stability that can literally save lives by preventing the descent into collective hysteria. We can find powerful, though less documented, examples of this in the ancient world. Imagine a small Stoic-inspired community facing a shared disaster, perhaps a sudden food shortage or an impending siege. While a panicked mob might descend into a frantic, every person for themselves scramble that ultimately ensures everyone suffers, a group guided by Stoic principles would respond differently. Their first act would be to call upon reason, not emotion. They would gather not to shout, but to assess. They would practice the view from above not as individuals, but as a collective, asking, what is the true nature of our situation, stripped of fear? What resources do we actually have? What is within our power to do, and what must we accept? This rational gathering would naturally lead to a just distribution of tasks and resources, because Stoic virtue always points toward the common good. The stronger would look to protect the weaker, not exploit them, because justice is a core Stoic virtue. The calmer would reassure the more frightened, not dismiss them, because compassion is a duty. Their shared commitment to focusing on what they can control would transform a potential catastrophe into a difficult but manageable project of communal survival. Marcus Aurelius, who led the largest community of his time, the entire Roman Empire, constantly meditated on this interconnectedness. He wrote, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee." This simple, beautiful metaphor captures the essence of Stoic community. The individual's well-being is inextricably linked to the health of the whole. An action taken in selfish panic might offer a short-term advantage to one person, but it ultimately weakens the entire structure that supports them. Conversely, an action taken for the common good, even if it requires personal sacrifice, strengthens the entire hive, which in turn benefits every single bee. He also reminded himself, men exist for the sake of one another, teach them then or bear with them. This is the dual mandate of Stoic community engagement. When you can, use your reason to help others see more clearly, and when you cannot, practice the virtues of patience and tolerance. Your calm is not a private possession to be hoarded, but a public resource to be shared. This ancient principle translates with stunning clarity to our modern tribes, our workplaces, our families, our groups of friends. Think about the last time you were in a stressful meeting at work. Tensions were high, deadlines were looming, and perhaps one person began to speak in a sharp, anxious tone. You could feel the anxiety in the room spike, infecting everyone, making clear thinking impossible. Now, imagine a different scenario. In that same meeting, one person remains consistently calm. They don't dismiss the problems, but they approach them with a measured tone. They listen deeply before responding. They reframe catastrophic thinking with rational questions. What's the next step we can actually take? Or let's separate what we know from what we're afraid of. This single person's composure acts as a heat sink, absorbing the collective anxiety and lowering the room's emotional temperature. They don't solve the problem alone. They create the conditions in which the entire group can solve it together. Their calm is contagious in the best possible way. The same dynamic plays out in our families. A household is a tiny ecosystem, incredibly sensitive to the emotional weather of its members. A parent who responds to a child's meltdown not with their own escalating frustration, but with a steady, calm presence, is practicing Stoic community building. They are teaching by example that emotions can be felt without being obeyed, that a problem can be faced without panic. They are not just managing a behavior, they are fortifying the family's shared resilience for the next challenge. Your calm becomes the emotional floor beneath your loved ones. When they feel themselves falling into anxiety or anger, they know they will land on your stability, not be met by more chaos. This is how Stoicism moves from the page into practice, from the individual to the collective. It transforms your inner peace into a social good, a quiet offering of strength that makes everyone around you more capable and more resilient. So consider the various communities you move through every day, your team at work, your family at home, your circle of friends. How can you consciously choose to let your hard-won calm influence that group positively? It might be as simple as being the one to take a deep breath before speaking in a tense moment, or actively listening to understand rather than to rebut, or gently guiding a conversation from complaint toward solution. You are not just calming yourself, you are architecting a pocket of reason in a world that often feels increasingly chaotic. But perhaps the most famous modern embodiment of this principle is the story of Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor. While not a Stoic in the classical sense, his philosophy of logotherapy is a powerful echo of Stoic thought. Imprisoned in the unimaginable horror of a Nazi concentration camp, Frankl was stripped of every external marker of his identity, his home, his possessions, even the manuscript of his life's work. He observed that while the gods could control his body and his environment, they could not control his inner freedom, his ability to choose his attitude in any given set of circumstances. He wrote, "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way." In the face of the ultimate obstacle, Frankl reframed his entire existence. His suffering became a field for psychological observation and a profound discovery of meaning. He transformed his personal hell into the raw material for a revolutionary approach to psychotherapy that would go on to heal millions. His life stands as a monumental testament to the idea that the most powerful transformation occurs not when the obstacle is removed, but when we change our relationship to the obstacle itself. This art of alchemy, of turning base metal into gold, is not reserved for saints or philosophers. It is a practical skill available to anyone willing to practice a shift in perception. It begins with a simple but profound question, a question that can be applied to any difficulty, large or small, that you currently face. Look directly at the obstacle in your path. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" or "How can I get rid of this?" ask instead, "How can this be used? What hidden advantage does this contain? What strength might this force me to develop that I have been neglecting?" A career setback becomes an invitation to finally explore that side business you've been dreaming about. A physical injury that limits your mobility becomes a masterclass in patience and a chance to deepen your capacity for listening and intellectual pursuits. A difficult personal relationship becomes your daily training ground for practicing boundaries, compassion, and emotional regulation. The obstacle itself begins to look less like a roadblock and more like a signpost, pointing you toward the very lessons you most need to learn. So bring this question into your life with courageous honesty. What current obstacle, whether it feels like a minor irritation or a massive wall, can you begin to transform into an advantage starting right now? Now let's turn to what may be the most profound and challenging practice of all, the Stoic preparation for death. For the Stoics, death was not a tragic interruption of life to be feared and avoided at all costs, but a natural and inevitable part of the cycle of existence, as ordinary and predictable as the setting of the sun. They saw the frantic human denial of this basic fact as a primary source of anxiety, fueling a low-grade panic that colors so many of our choices. By contrast, the deliberate and clear-eyed contemplation of our own mortality was for them the ultimate liberator. It was the practice that put all other practices into perspective, the master key that unlocked a life of genuine purpose, gratitude, and, most importantly, strategic calm. To stare directly at the one thing we most fear and to make peace with it is to become free from all lesser fears. We find one of the most powerful historical examples of this principle in the death of Seneca. Condemned to suicide by his former student, the Emperor Nero, Seneca found himself facing the ultimate test of his philosophy. The accounts from the historian Tacitus depict a man who met his end not with hysterical desperation, but with a calm, almost administrative dignity. When the soldiers arrived with the emperor's orders, Seneca did not beg or rage. He calmly asked for his will, and when this was refused, he turned to his friends and family and essentially gave his final lecture. He told them not to weep, reminding them of the Stoic principles they had studied together for so long. He argued that the quality of a life is measured by its virtue, not its length, and that a wise person could leave life at any time with the same composure as finishing a satisfying meal. Even the physical act itself was carried out with a grim practicality. When the poison he ingested worked too slowly, he entered a warm bath to hasten the process, and as he died, he dictated his final thoughts to his scribes. His calm was not a performance, it was the culmination of a lifetime of mental rehearsal. He had practiced for this moment every single day through the discipline of Premeditatio Malorum. Because he had already died 1,000 times in his imagination, the actual event held no terrifying power over him. His peace was the direct result of his preparation. This practice of preparing for death was a daily exercise for the Stoics, not a morbid obsession but a vital reminder to live well. Epictetus constantly urged his students to keep their own mortality at the forefront of their minds. He taught, keep death and exile and all things which appear terrible daily before your eyes, but most especially death, and you will never entertain any abject thought, nor too eagerly covet anything. This is the practice of Memento Mori, remember that you must die. Far from being a depressing mantra, it was designed to be an electrifying wake-up call. The constant awareness that your time is limited and could end at any moment is the most powerful tool imaginable for prioritizing what truly matters. It vaporizes trivial concerns, silences the noise of other people's opinions, and forces a stark clarity onto your decisions. Why would you waste a single hour on resentment, envy, or fear when you could be called away before the sun sets? This awareness doesn't lead to a frantic, bucket list hedonism, but to a deep, focused commitment to living virtuously right now with the people who are right here. This ancient wisdom finds a direct and practical application in our modern approach to end-of-life planning and risk management, creating a will, setting up advanced healthcare directives, discussing your wishes with loved ones. These are not morbid tasks. They are profound acts of Stoic courage and responsibility. They are the practical implementation of Memento Mori. By calmly putting your affairs in order, you are not inviting death. You are robbing it of its power to create chaos and additional suffering for those you leave behind. You are accepting the reality of your own transience and taking control of the parts of the process that you can actually influence. This practical preparation creates immense psychological freedom. The peace of mind that comes from knowing your loved ones will be cared for and your wishes will be respected allows you to actually relax into your present life more fully. You are no longer subconsciously running from a shadowy, unacknowledged fear. You have turned and faced it, shaken its hand, and made a plan, and in doing so, you have neutralized its ability to haunt you. This practice ultimately forces a single, life-altering question into the center of our consciousness, a question that can reshape every mundane moment of our existence. If you were to truly internalize the fact that today could be your last, not in a fearful way, but in a factual, accepting way, how would it change your actions? Not in a dramatic, cinematic sense, but in the small, intimate choices that make up a life. Would you be more likely to swallow your pride and apologize for that silly argument? Would you be more likely to put down your phone and truly listen to your child's story? Would you spend your hour of free time scrolling through social media, or would you call an old friend you've been meaning to reconnect with? The awareness of death is the great clarifier. It strips away the procrastination and the self-deception, revealing the stunningly obvious truth that the only time we ever have to be courageous, to be kind, to be present, and to love is right now. This is the ultimate calm that the Stoics offer us, not a calm that comes from guaranteeing a long life, but a calm that comes from knowing that no matter how long your life is, you are living it with your eyes wide open, fully engaged in the only moment that is ever truly yours. Now let's turn to one of the most transformative practices in the Stoic toolkit, the conscious cultivation of gratitude, not in spite of hardship, but because of it. It's a radical shift from our default mode of complaint. When something goes wrong, our instinct is to focus on what's been taken away, to lament the disruption to our plans. The Stoics proposed a different path. They practiced actively thanking fate for whatever it sent their way, especially the challenges. This wasn't a Pollyannish denial of reality or a forced positivity. It was a deep, philosophical recognition that difficulty is not an interruption of a good life, but an essential ingredient of it. It is the friction that sharpens our character, the resistance that builds our strength, the loss that teaches us the true value of what we had. This practice is beautifully illustrated in the way a Stoic might face a period of illness. While no one would choose to be sick, the experience can forcibly reacquaint us with the profound gift of our ordinary health. Those days of feeling strong and energetic, which we so often take for granted, are suddenly revealed in their true glory only when they are temporarily absent. The Stoic would give thanks for this clarity. The illness itself becomes a teacher, a harsh but effective instructor in the art of appreciation. Similarly, the loss of a relationship, while deeply painful, can often carve out a deeper capacity for connection within us. It can teach us what we truly value in companionship, force us to mature emotionally, and make us more compassionate and present in our future relationships. The Stoic would find a way to be grateful for these hard-won lessons, understanding that some forms of wisdom can only be earned through loss. Marcus Aurelius returns to this theme of acceptance and gratitude repeatedly in his private writings. He reminds himself, and by extension all of us too, accept the things to which fate binds you, and love the people with whom fate brings you together, but do so with all your heart. He is urging a full-hearted embrace of the entire package of his life, the duties that chafe, the people who irritate, the setbacks that disappoint. He saw each element as a necessary part of his training. In another passage, he offers a simple mantra for daily living. A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it. He is the fire. Every obstacle, every piece of bad news, every personal flaw is not waste. It is fuel for his inner light. His gratitude is the energy that transforms the base material of hardship into the gold of virtue. This ancient discipline finds a powerful echo in a very modern practice, the gratitude journal. The act of writing down a few things we are thankful for each day is more than a self-help trend. It is a practical tool for cognitive restructuring. It systematically trains the brain to scan the environment for positives rather than negatives, to notice the countless small gifts that are easily overlooked in the shadow of a single problem. The Stoic version would go a step further. It wouldn't just list the obvious blessings like family and health. It would actively include the challenges. Today, I am grateful for the difficult conversation I had with my colleague, because it forced me to clarify my thoughts and stand up for my values. I am grateful for the project that failed, because it taught me a crucial lesson about preparation. I am grateful for the traffic jam, because it gave me 10 minutes of unexpected quiet to simply sit and think. This is gratitude as a form of alchemy, turning leaden experiences into golden insights. So let's bring this profound shift in perspective into the realm of your own lived experience. Look back at a recent difficulty, a disappointment, or a period of struggle. Instead of focusing on the pain it caused, ask yourself the question the Stoics would pose: what hidden gift did this difficulty bring? Did a professional failure free you from a career path that was never truly yours, opening the door to something more authentic? Did a personal betrayal teach you a vital lesson about trust and the importance of setting boundaries? Did a period of loneliness help you discover your own resilience and cultivate a deeper friendship with yourself? The gift is rarely the hardship itself, but the strength, wisdom, or clarity that you are forced to develop in order to meet it. Uncovering that gift is not about dismissing the pain, but about honoring the growth that occurred within it, finding the small, sturdy seed of good that was planted in the dark soil of the bad. And while some disasters strike with the sudden, brutal force of a lightning bolt, others unfold with the slow, grinding pressure of a tectonic plate, a prolonged siege, a years-long exile, a chronic illness that becomes a constant, unwelcome companion. These are the crises that cannot be navigated with a single moment of heroic courage. They demand a different kind of strength entirely, a sustained and strategic calm known as Stoic patience. This is not the passive, sighing resignation of someone who has simply given up, who is merely waiting for the storm to pass. Stoic patience is something far more active and powerful. It is the daily, conscious choice to endure with purpose, to maintain your principles and your equanimity not for a day or a week, but for months and even years on end. It is the unwavering commitment to tend the inner citadel day after day, even when the outer world shows no sign of change, because you understand that your fortress is not built for a single battle, but for an entire war. We can see this profound endurance in the lived experiences of the Stoics themselves. Consider the reality of exile in the ancient world. To be banished from Rome was to be severed from your identity, your property, your family, and your entire social world, cast out to live on the margins of the empire, often in a remote and unfamiliar province. This was not a quick punishment, it was a life sentence of isolation and obscurity. The Stoic response to this long-term pressure was not to languish in despair, counting the days until a pardon that might never come. Instead, they practiced active endurance. They would work to build a new life, find a new community, and continue their philosophical work wherever they were planted. They understood that their virtue was not location-dependent. Their character, their ability to reason, and their capacity for inner freedom traveled with them. This transforms patience from a passive waiting into an active engagement with the present moment, no matter how constrained or difficult that present may be. Similarly, think of a chronic illness in an age without modern medicine, a constant pain or debilitating condition that became the backdrop of an entire life. The Stoic would learn to differentiate between the sensation of the pain itself, which might be unavoidable, and the secondary suffering of the stories they told about it, the self-pity, the resentment, the constant asking of, "Why me?" Their patience was the practice of accepting the first while refusing to add the second, of finding ways to live a life of meaning and purpose within the new and permanent boundaries of their physical reality. Seneca, who wrote extensively about the challenges of time and illness, offers us some of the most powerful insights on this form of long-term resilience. In his essay on the shortness of life, he argues that life is not short, but that we make it so through our wastefulness and our inability to be truly present. He writes, "We are not given a short life, but we make it short, and we are not ill-supplied, but wasteful of it." When applied to patience, this wisdom is revolutionary. It suggests that the feeling of a prolonged, interminable hardship is often a trick of the mind. When we are impatient, when we desperately want a difficult chapter to be over, we are mentally leaping into a future that does not exist. We are abandoning the only time we ever truly have the present moment, and in doing so, we are wasting the very life we are so eager to get on with. True Stoic patience, therefore, is the ultimate practice of presence. It is the decision to stop waiting for your life to begin when the hardship ends, and to instead live fully and virtuously within the hardship itself. It is the understanding that a year of pain can still be a year of growth, A decade of limitation can still be a decade of contribution if we choose to engage with it rather than simply endure it. This ancient practice is perhaps more relevant now than ever before, as so many of us find ourselves facing modern versions of these long-term pressures. The global pandemic was not a single event but a 2-year slow burn of uncertainty, isolation, and adapted routines, a collective lesson in sustained patience. The journey of caregiving for a loved one with a degenerative disease is a marathon of devotion that requires a deep well of daily calm and resilience, where the finish line is not a cure but a peaceful end. Even the constant, low-grade stress of a demanding career or the long-term project of raising a family requires a different kind of stamina than the adrenaline-fueled response to a sudden emergency. These are the sieges of our modern lives. They cannot be won with a single, brilliant charge. They are won by the quiet, determined actions repeated every single day, showing up, doing the work, offering kindness, and refusing to let the pressure erode your character. It is in these prolonged struggles that the deep, structural integrity of your Stoic practice is truly tested and ultimately strengthened. So let's turn this immense idea inward and make it personal. Look at the landscape of your own life and identify the ongoing pressure, the slow-moving disaster that requires not a burst of courage, but a deep reservoir of patience. Where is your siege? Is it a professional situation that feels stagnant and unchanging, demanding a persistence that you struggle to muster? Is it a long-term health challenge, either for yourself or someone you love, that asks for a daily commitment to care without any promise of improvement? Is it a personal goal or creative project that is unfolding at a much slower pace than you had hoped, testing your faith in the process? Pinpoint that area, and then ask yourself not how you can escape it, but how you can practice active endurance within it. How can you show up today, in this moment, and perform the next right action with integrity and calm, without needing to know when or how the larger situation will finally resolve? This is the cultivation of deep patience. It is the recognition that some of the most important fruits in life, wisdom, resilience, strength of character, grow only in the slow, patient soil of enduring difficulty, and they cannot be rushed. Complexity is a vulnerability. The more intricate the web of our lives becomes, the more possessions we accumulate, the more commitments we juggle, the more variables we try to control, the more points of failure we create. When a disaster strikes, whether it's a personal crisis or a global one, it doesn't just hit us, it reverberates through this entire complex system, snagging on every obligation, every unnecessary object, every tangled priority, amplifying the stress and chaos. The Stoics understood this intimately. They saw that a cluttered life is a fragile life, and they advocated for a radical simplification, not as an aesthetic choice, but as a strategic defense mechanism for the soul. By deliberately stripping away the inessential, they fortified their inner citadel, ensuring that when external storms arrived, there was less that could be shaken and fewer attachments that could cause them pain. This pursuit of simplicity was a direct path to focusing on what they deemed the only true essentials: virtue, reason, and our duty to others. A life cluttered with luxuries, social obligations, and the relentless pursuit of status is a life perpetually distracted from these core pursuits. Seneca, despite his immense wealth, was one of the most vocal proponents of this philosophy. He saw the burden that complexity placed on the human spirit. In one of his most piercing letters, he writes, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." He wasn't just talking about financial poverty, but a poverty of attention and peace. He observed that great wealth inevitably brings great worry, the fear of losing it, the anxiety of managing it, the constant need to protect and grow it. This creates a state of self-imposed siege, where we become the prisoners of our own possessions, constantly on guard against the very disasters our complexity makes us more vulnerable to. We can see the practical application of this in the ancient world. A Stoic philosopher might choose to live in a modest home, not because he couldn't afford more, but because a large villa requires a staff of servants, constant maintenance, and invites envy and gossip, all of which are distractions from his philosophical work. He might own only one simple cloak and a few books, because each additional tunic, each extra scroll, is one more thing to worry about, one more thing that could be lost in a fire or stolen by a thief. This minimalism wasn't about deprivation, it was about liberation. By reducing his physical possessions to the bare essentials, he was buying the most valuable commodity of all, mental space and freedom from anxiety. His life became lightweight, agile, and resilient. If he needed to flee a political purge or a natural disaster, he could gather his few belongings and go without a moment's hesitation or regret. His peace was not tied to any of those objects. This ancient discipline finds a powerful and direct parallel in the modern minimalist movement, which urges us to question our attachment to physical clutter and busyness. But the Stoic version goes deeper than just decluttering a closet. It's about auditing our entire lives for unnecessary complexity. It's about the commitment we automatically say yes to out of guilt, which then hangs over our head for months. It's the subscription services that drain our bank accounts and our attention. It's the constant stream of notifications and information that fractures our focus and keeps us in a state of low-grade emergency. Each of these complexities is a tiny thread that, when pulled by a disaster, can unravel our entire sense of stability. The modern Stoic practice is to consciously cut these threads before they can be pulled. It's to ask of every possession, every commitment, every digital distraction, does this serve my core purpose? Does this contribute to my virtue and my peace? Or does it merely add to the background noise of my worry? Simplifying, therefore, becomes an active form of disaster preparedness. It's the mental and emotional equivalent of securing the furniture before an earthquake. You are reducing the number of things that can fall and cause injury when the ground shakes. This creates a profound sense of calm and control, not because you can prevent the earthquake, but because you have wisely minimized its potential for collateral damage within your own life. Your energy is no longer siphoned off by managing a vast inventory of non-essentials. It is conserved and focused on what truly matters: your judgments, your actions, and your connections to the people you love. So let this be an invitation to conduct a personal audit of your own complexity. Look at your schedule, your possessions, your digital life, and your obligations. What is one complication, one single source of background friction that you could remove to significantly increase your daily peace? It might be as simple as unsubscribing from a dozen promotional emails that create a sense of lack, or it could be the courageous act of stepping down from a committee that drains your energy without fulfilling your soul. Each simplification is a brick added to the wall of your inner citadel, making it stronger, quieter, and more resilient against the inevitable pressures of the world. Now here's a side of Stoicism that might genuinely surprise you: the use of sharp, deflating humor as a tool for maintaining perspective when everything feels overwhelmingly serious. We often picture the Stoic sage as solemn and unflinching, a marble statue of composure, but the historical record shows they had a well-developed and purposeful wit. They understood that laughter, especially in the face of adversity, isn't a betrayal of seriousness. It's often the wisest and most strategic response available. Humor has a unique ability to puncture the balloon of our own inflated anxieties, to create a tiny bit of mental distance between us and a problem, allowing us to see it for what it really is, rather than the monstrous catastrophe our fears can make it out to be. In the middle of a crisis, a well-timed laugh can be an act of rebellion against despair, a way to reclaim a small piece of your inner freedom. We find brilliant examples of this in the letters of Seneca, who frequently used irony and playful mockery to make his points. He didn't just preach about the folly of chasing wealth and status. He painted hilarious, exaggerated portraits of the miserable rich, the man who sleeps on a purse full of money but is too anxious to rest, the social climber who endures seasickness and miserable travel just to be seen in the right circles. By laughing at these figures, Seneca wasn't being cruel. He was holding up a funhouse mirror to our own misguided desires, showing us how ridiculous they appear from a slightly different angle. His humor was a solvent, breaking down the glue of our attachment to things that don't truly matter. He even joked about the ultimate external, death itself. In one letter, he muses that we fear death as if we know for certain it's a terrible thing, when in fact it might be a relief, quipping that perhaps we should reserve our fear for a potentially endless life of boredom and repetition. This isn't gallows humor for its own sake. It's a cognitive tool to strip the terror from the unknown by inviting us to consider its absurdity. Epictetus, the former slave, also wielded humor like a philosophical scalpel. His teachings, recorded by his student Arrian, are filled with blunt, almost slapstick metaphors designed to shock his students out of their complacency. He compared a person who gets upset over a broken vase to a traveler who becomes distraught when an inn they are merely passing through is renovated without their permission. The image is deliberately silly, making the point that our attachment to temporary externals is fundamentally irrational. His most famous humorous injunction is perhaps his most powerful. If you are ever tempted to boast about your military rank or your intellectual prowess, remember that you are just boasting about qualities you inherited from a donkey or a horse: strength and an ability to carry a load. This is humor that instantly deflates the ego and brings us crashing back down to earth, reminding us that our external achievements are not our core selves. It's a sudden dose of perspective delivered with a punchline. This ancient practice of using levity as a shield against life's heaviness is something we see echoed in the most effective modern responses to stress and disaster. Think of the doctors and nurses in an intensive care unit who share a dark joke at the nurse's station after a difficult loss. This isn't a sign of callousness, it's a vital pressure valve, a way to release the built-up tension of holding life and death responsibility so they can return to their patients with renewed focus and compassion. Or consider the way communities often come together after a natural disaster, where amidst the rubble and loss, you'll inevitably find people making jokes about the situation. This shared laughter is a powerful bonding agent. It's a collective declaration that while the storm may have taken their roof, it hasn't taken their spirit. It reinforces the very Stoic idea that our character, our ability to choose our response, is the one thing that can never be taken from us, and sometimes that response is a defiant, life-affirming chuckle. So how can you practically apply this surprisingly light tool to the weight you might be carrying right now? It begins with a simple shift in perception, a willingness to look for the slight absurdity hidden within the struggle. You don't need to tell jokes at a funeral or force laughter when you're grieving. This is a much more subtle and internal practice. It's about gently mocking the monstrous proportions your worry has taken on. When you find yourself catastrophizing about a work presentation, can you step back and laugh at the elaborate horror movie your mind is directing, where a single missed slide leads to professional ruin and public humiliation? The act of labeling that mental story as a slightly ridiculous drama immediately reduces its power. It's about finding the irony in the situation, the fact that the thing you were so desperately trying to control was never controllable in the first place. Today, in the midst of your own heavy situation, whether it's a personal conflict, a financial pressure, or a world full of bad news, can you find one small corner of it to view with a lighter heart? Can you share a laugh with a friend about the universal human struggle, or simply smile at your own tendency to take things so seriously? Finding that sliver of lightness isn't about avoiding the gravity of life. It's about proving to yourself that you are larger than your problems, that your spirit cannot be completely subdued by external events. Now let's turn from these grand, sweeping practices to a simple but profoundly effective nightly ritual that the Stoics used to sharpen their strategic calm day by day. They understood that resilience isn't built in a single dramatic moment of crisis. It's constructed in the quiet, consistent moments of reflection that follow the countless small pressures of an ordinary day. This practice is known as the daily review, or in Greek, ephemeroi, and it was their version of a debrief for the soul. Each evening before sleep, a Stoic would set aside a few moments to look back over the day with a gentle but honest eye, not to judge themselves harshly, but to learn. They were conducting an audit of their own judgments and reactions, identifying where they had allowed externals to disturb their peace, and planning how to strengthen their inner citadel for the challenges yet to come. Imagine Seneca, after a long day of advising Nero and navigating the treacherous politics of the Roman court, retiring to his study. He wouldn't just collapse from exhaustion, he would take out his scrolls and engage in a deliberate dialogue with himself. In his moral letters, he describes this process to his friend Lucilius, recounting how he would ask himself pointed questions. What vice did you cure today? What fault did you resist? In what part are you better? His focus wasn't on the external events of the day, what the emperor said or did, but on his own internal weather. Did he feel a flash of anger when criticized? Did a moment of envy arise when a rival received praise? Did he experience anxiety over a potential future problem that never even came to pass? By examining these subtle movements of his own mind, Seneca was doing the essential maintenance work on his character. He was patching the small cracks in his foundation so they wouldn't widen into fissures during a true disaster. This practice is beautifully echoed in the writings of Epictetus, who gave his students very clear instructions for this daily review. He taught that progress in philosophy isn't about spouting elegant theories. It's about tangible, measurable improvement in managing our everyday impressions. He said, if you didn't learn today that you are a fool, you remain a fool. This sounds harsh to our modern ears, but his meaning is deeply compassionate. He's urging a radical honesty, a willingness to see where we have been governed by faulty judgments rather than reason. The goal of the review is to catch those moments where we handed over the keys to our tranquility to an external event. Did someone's critical comment ruin your afternoon? The review isn't about blaming the other person. It's about asking why you gave their words that much power over your state of mind. It's about recognizing that the comment itself was neutral, a string of words, and that it was your own judgment that labeled it as a catastrophe, a judgment you can learn to withhold next time. This ancient ritual finds a powerful and direct parallel in the modern popularity of journaling and mindfulness practices. While many today use a journal as a place to vent and recount the day's drama, the Stoic review has a different, more active purpose. It's less a diary and more a trainer's logbook. You aren't just writing down what happened, you are analyzing your performance. A modern Stoic journal entry might look something like this. First, you would calmly recount the facts of a challenging event, stripping away the emotional charge. Then, you would identify the specific impression that knocked you off center. Was it a feeling of insult, a fear of loss, a craving for recognition? Next, you would examine the judgment you attached to that impression. Did you decide it was unfair or catastrophic? Finally, and most importantly, you would plan a better response for next time. This turns every stumble into a learning opportunity, every moment of lost calm into a data point for building greater resilience. It's the process of continuously upgrading your own mental software. So let's bring this transformative practice out of the ancient world and into the quiet of your own evening. The television is off, the phone is set aside, and the day is done. Ask yourself the question that guided the Stoics in their nightly reflection. Look back over the last 24 hours with curiosity rather than criticism. What single moment today most challenged your sense of calm? Was it the frustration of a delayed commute, the sharp tone in a conversation with a loved one, or the slow burning anxiety about a deadline? Now gently dissect that moment. What was the initial trigger, and what was the story you immediately started telling yourself about it? Did that story amplify the problem? And with this new clarity, what is one small, specific way you could choose to respond differently when a similar challenge inevitably arises tomorrow? This isn't about achieving perfection. It's about recognizing that each day offers a new set of reps in the gymnasium of the mind, and this simple review is how you ensure that you are always steadily getting stronger. So we've journeyed through the Stoic toolkit, from the foundational dichotomy of control to the cosmic perspective of the view from above, from the mental rehearsal of Premeditatio Malorum to the active embrace of Amor, Fati. We've seen how these principles were forged in the fires of ancient disasters, teaching the Stoics, and now us, that calm is not the absence of storms, but the learned skill of navigating them with purpose. These aren't just isolated techniques. They are interconnected strands woven into a single, resilient mindset. It's the understanding that your perspective shapes your reality, that your resilience is built through voluntary practice, and that your ultimate anchor in any turbulence is not what you have, but who you are, your virtue. This is the essence of strategic calm, a proactive, integrated approach to life that transforms pressure from a threat into a platform for growth. But here is the most vital point to internalize. Strategic calm is not a switch you flip when an emergency hits. You cannot wait for the hurricane to arrive and then suddenly decide to become an oak tree with deep roots. This kind of composure is a way of life, a constant and practiced orientation toward the world that you cultivate in the countless small moments of an ordinary day. It is the sum of 1,000 tiny choices, choosing to pause before reacting to a frustrating email, consciously reframing a minor inconvenience as a chance to practice patience, or taking a deep breath and seeking the objective facts behind a worrying headline. This is how you build your inner citadel, not with grand, dramatic gestures, but brick by daily brick through consistent, mindful repetition. Marcus Aurelius, who embodied this unity of thought and action, put it perfectly. Don't go on discussing what a good person should be. Just be one. Philosophy, for the Stoics, was never meant to be a theoretical exercise confined to scrolls and lectures. Its true value is only realized when it is lived, breathed, and acted upon in the messy, unpredictable reality of our daily existence. The beautiful simplicity of this approach is that you can start weaving these principles into the fabric of your life immediately, with whatever you have, right where you are. You don't need to retreat to a mountaintop or completely overhaul your existence. The practice meets you in the mundane. It begins the moment your alarm clock goes off. Instead of immediately grabbing your phone and inundating your mind with the world's demands, you could claim just 5 minutes of silence to set an intention for the day, perhaps recalling the dichotomy of control by mentally noting what will and won't be within your power. Your commute becomes a mobile gymnasium for the mind. Instead of feeding frustration in traffic, you can practice the view from above, imagining your car on the vast network of roads from a satellite's perspective, shrinking the delay to its true, insignificant size. A stressful interaction at work becomes a training ground for objective judgment, where you consciously strip away the emotional charge and look for the neutral facts. And your evening review, even if it's just a minute of reflection while brushing your teeth, is where you solidify the lessons, acknowledging where you held your calm and where you can strengthen your walls tomorrow. This isn't about achieving perfection, it's about direction. The goal is progress, not a flawless performance. Some days you will be the Stoic sage, meeting chaos with unwavering clarity. Other days you will lose your composure and react from a place of old habits. The practice is in the return, not in never stumbling. The key is to choose one small, specific, and immediate practice to focus on right now. Don't try to master everything at once. Perhaps for the next week, your entire practice will be to implement a single 3-second pause between receiving a stimulus and formulating your response. In that tiny space, you will find the freedom to choose your reaction. Or maybe your practice will be to perform one daily act of voluntary discomfort, like taking a cooler shower, to prove to yourself that your comfort is not a prerequisite for your peace. Whatever you choose, let it be small enough to be sustainable, but meaningful enough to feel like a genuine step toward the unshakable calm you are building within. This is how a philosophy from antiquity becomes a living, breathing part of your modern life, not as a rigid set of rules, but as a flexible and powerful way of moving through the world with greater intention, resilience, and peace. So what have these ancient catastrophes and the philosophers who endured them taught us? The central lesson is this profound and empowering truth. Calm is not a lucky accident of personality, nor is it the absence of pressure. It is a strategic choice, a skill built deliberately on a foundation of timeless principles. The Stoics didn't stumble upon serenity by chance. They constructed it, thought by thought, action by action, in the midst of fires, plagues, and exile. They proved that our inner peace is not held hostage by external events, but is instead the direct result of where we choose to place our attention and our effort. This is the ultimate takeaway. Your composure is your creation. It is the architecture of your own mind, designed with the blueprints of control, perspective, and virtue. Let's briefly revisit the core pillars of this strategic calm. It begins with the fundamental act of sorting your world into two categories, a practice that instantly cuts through the noise, what is within your control and what is not. Your opinions, your judgments, your actions, these are your domain. Everything else, from the weather to the opinions of others, is outside your command, and to struggle against it is to invite endless frustration. From this clear foundation, we learn the art of reframing, of seeing the obstacle not as a barrier but as the very path itself. Every difficulty, every setback becomes raw material for building your strength, a chance to practice a specific virtue you might otherwise neglect. And underpinning it all is the daily, consistent practice of resilience, the small, voluntary discomforts and the nightly reflections that forge a spirit capable of bending in the storm without breaking. These are not just ideas, they are tools for living, tested in the most extreme laboratories of human experience. The Roman philosopher Seneca, who witnessed immense wealth and terrifying poverty, political triumph and brutal exile, arrived at a conclusion that captures the entire Stoic journey. He wrote, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future, not to amuse ourselves with either hopes or fears, but to rest satisfied with what we have, which is sufficient, for he that is so wants nothing." The greatest blessings of mankind are within us and within our reach. That final line is the key. The greatest blessings are within us. peace was never out there to be found. It was always in here to be built and claimed. Your strategic calm is your birthright waiting to be exercised. This isn't about transforming your entire life in a single day. The most powerful changes always begin with a single, focused step. So here is your invitation, your first deliberate act of building. Before this video ends, identify one specific pressure point in your upcoming week. It could be a difficult conversation you've been avoiding, a looming deadline that triggers your anxiety, or even the daily frustration of your morning commute. Now make a choice, decide which Stoic principle you will apply to that moment. Will you practice the dichotomy of control, consciously releasing your grip on the outcome and focusing only on your own preparation and conduct? Will you reframe the obstacle, looking for the hidden advantage or the lesson it contains? Or will you simply practice presence, anchoring yourself entirely in the current task rather than being swept away by worries about what comes next? Just one principle applied to one situation. That is how you start. If this journey into Stoic wisdom has resonated with you, if you're ready to build more resilience and calm in your own life, then consider subscribing to this channel. We explore these timeless ideas every week, turning ancient philosophy into practical tools for modern living, and I would genuinely love to hear about your experiences. Down in the comments, tell me about the pressure point you've chosen and which principle you plan to apply. Your insights not only enrich your own practice, but can become a source of wisdom and encouragement for this entire community. Thank you for watching, and remember, no matter what storms you face, your inner citadel awaits your command.